Where are you? What's happening? My husband's voice sounded worried on the answering machine. My mom's in trouble. He said his mother had collapsed and was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. While getting things ready for her hospital stay, I found a shocking picture of my husband and his sister. Seeing it made me freeze, and I ran to my parents' house to escape. I've been with my husband for 3 years, but now I felt deceived. He didn't truly care about me, he just wanted a wife. I couldn't forgive him, so I decided to divorce him. My name's Sarah. I'm 32 and work at a beauty salon. 4 years ago, I felt rushed. All my friends were getting married, and I wanted to too. Hearing about their husbands and kids made me feel left out, even though they didn't mean it. I'd cry on the way home sometimes, feeling jealous. I had a boyfriend before, but I wondered if I'd ever find someone to marry. So, with 2 years left in my 20s, I threw myself into finding a husband. I tried dating apps and went to marriage events, but it was tough finding the right person. The ones I liked weren't interested in getting married, and things never progressed. I wasn't asking for much, just someone to share my life with. I only had friendships and short-lived relationships. Seeing my friends getting married one by one, I decided to join a marriage agency, even though it was pricey. I hope I find someone serious about marriage there. That's when I met Ken, my husband. He was 5 years older than me and worked for a big company. He was really good-looking, and I wondered why he wasn't married yet. When I saw his profile, I just knew he was the one for me. When we first met, Ken said he wanted to get married soon, and I felt the same way. He was just as nice and polite as he seemed online, and I felt really happy around him. I told him I didn't have much education or job experience, but I liked taking care of the house. He said he was too busy with work to do chores, so he wanted to marry someone like me. I felt flattered and excited. I lived alone with my mom because she's sick, and I can't leave her by herself. Ken said if we got married, he'd like my mom to live with us. He explained it nicely, and even though I was surprised, I felt like he was being honest with me. I've dealt with older women in my job, so I felt comfortable with the idea of living with my future mother-in-law. But what mattered most to me was getting to know Ken better. He seemed to really like me, and we went on a few dates together. The more I got to know him, the more I realized Ken was a true gentleman and a kind person. I even got the chance to meet his mom over dinner. She was small and very pretty. She told me I was too good for Ken and reassured me about living with her, saying she didn't need nursing care despite her chronic illness. She suggested we go out for parfait next time instead of dining at a fancy restaurant. With her relaxed, high-pitched voice and our shared love for sweets, I felt at ease about living together. Ken was eager to get married soon, and we began dating with the intention of tying the knot. Ken was always busy with work, but he made time for me. We went on trips and spent a lot of quality time together. Even seeing him first thing in the morning, my feelings for him didn't change. He was just as refreshing as when I first met him, and I found myself liking him more and more. His mom and I became close friends, bonding over our love for sweets. Despite her needing a lot of medication, Ken's mom was energetic and youthful. She didn't mind waiting in line at popular restaurants and looked forward to trying delicious food. Sometimes I forgot about the age difference between her and Ken because we got along so well. She shared some stories about her past struggles, including her own mother-in-law's divorces. After dating for about 6 months, Ken and I got married. I was thrilled to have gotten married just before turning 30, and I felt proud of the effort I had put into finding a partner. We quickly registered our marriage and started getting ready to move in together. Then one day, Ken told me he needed to talk to me about something important. I started to feel uneasy when Ken said he needed to talk to me about something I hadn't heard before. He revealed that he had a sister named Hannah, who wasn't his biological sister. Hannah was actually the daughter of Ken's stepfather from a previous marriage. Ken's parents had divorced 5 years ago, and his father had passed away. Because Hannah didn't have any other family, Ken felt responsible for her and kept in touch. Ken wanted to invite Hannah to our wedding, but his mom strongly opposed it because she didn't like me. Despite this, Ken wanted me to meet Hannah at least once because she meant a lot to him. I was curious and a bit worried about why Ken's mom disliked Hannah, especially since she had been so kind to me. However, seeing how much Ken cared about his family, I agreed to meet her. When I met Hannah, she was very beautiful and outgoing. She told me she worked at a bar, and I couldn't understand why Ken's mom didn't like her. She was friendly and made our meeting enjoyable. During our conversation, I nervously asked Hannah about living with Ken when they were younger. They shared funny stories, and it was clear they had a close bond. They seemed like the perfect siblings. As we said goodbye, Hannah apologized for not being able to attend our wedding and wished me well as a wife. On the way home, Ken asked me not to tell his mom about meeting Hannah, as it would only cause more problems. I didn't know the exact reason behind the conflict between my mother-in-law and Hannah, but I felt it wasn't my place to get involved. So I kept my meeting with Hannah to myself and focused on our life together as a family of 3. Ken was still busy with work, often coming home late. On his days off, he'd sometimes take my mother-in-law and me out for meals. We also did household chores together and occasionally enjoyed sweets or watched movies. Overall, things seemed happy, but I did worry about my mother-in-law's health since she sometimes slept all day when she wasn't feeling well. While I was at work, I made sure to keep in touch with her regularly. However, one thing that bothered me was Ken's constant phone use. He was always glued to his phone, even bringing it into the bathroom. At first, I thought he might be addicted to games, but it became concerning when it seemed excessive. Once I tried calling him several times, but his phone was busy the whole time. When he returned home, I mentioned it, but he just said he had received a call from work. Although we had just gotten married, I couldn't shake off the feeling of curiosity and concern about his behavior. I didn't think he was cheating on me, but I couldn't help but wonder. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law didn't seem bothered by his phone habits, considering it normal. One day, I couldn't shake off a bad feeling, so I glanced at Ken's phone screen and noticed he was frequently texting someone. It seemed like they talked often. Another night, Ken came home late, and I couldn't help but wonder who he was texting at such a late hour. Trying to play it off casually, I asked him, "Who do you always talk to in the middle of the night?" After my mother-in-law went to bed, I asked him about it, but he just laughed it off, saying it was his sister. He joked if I suspected him of cheating, and I laughed along, feeling silly for worrying too much. After that, I stopped worrying about his phone habits, even though he was still busy with work and didn't have much time for me. However, I started feeling uneasy about how much time he spent with Hannah. 2 years passed, and life with the 3 of us went smoothly. My mother-in-law and I had a routine of visiting the sweet store together. We shared a close bond, and I never felt awkward about living with her. Ken's work kept him busy, and he continued to be glued to his phone, but I had gotten used to it. Despite some minor complaints, we were a happy family. Ken always made time for family events, like our wedding anniversary and my birthday. Then, one day, my mother-in-law fell sick and spent the day in bed. I checked on her frequently, and in the evening she complained of pain. I quickly called an ambulance, and she was taken to the hospital. Though I was worried, I was relieved to find out her condition wasn't critical. I informed Ken about her hospitalization, and he left work early to join us at the hospital. I decided to go home to pack some things, planning to stay with my mother-in-law at the hospital for a few days. Upon returning home, I went to my mother-in-law's room to gather her insurance card and personal SIL. She had mentioned they were in the top drawer, but I couldn't find them there. So I checked the bottom drawer, where I stumbled upon a small box. Thinking it might contain what I was looking for, I opened it, only to find a shockingly large number of photographs inside. As I looked through them, my heart sank. The pictures weren't of Ken and Hannah as siblings, they were of them as lovers. They were holding hands, kissing each other, and the sight made me feel sick to my stomach. I couldn't bear to look at them for long, so I closed the box. The realization hit me hard. Ken had been having an affair with Hannah all this time, and I couldn't believe it. My mind went blank, and the next thing I knew, I was running to my parents' house, clutching the box tightly. At my parents' house, my mother was surprised to see me in such distress. When she saw the contents of the box, she hugged me tightly as I broke down in tears. After a while, when I had calmed down a bit, she asked me if Ken was cheating. I explained to her that the woman in the pictures was Hannah, and the box was found in my mother-in-law's room. I hadn't even told my own mother about having a sister-in-law. I can't continue living with him, I sobbed to my mother. Of course not. You absolutely can't stay with him, she replied firmly, sharing my anger. When I checked my phone, I saw numerous missed calls from Ken and an angry voicemail asking where I was and what I was doing while his mother was in trouble. But after discovering the truth, I couldn't bring myself to respond. I was really upset, but I thought it was strange because I felt like I should be the one who's angry. So, I turned off my phone because just talking about it made me feel sick thinking about the pictures. The next day, I decided to be kind and reach out to him. I said, I need to talk to you tonight. I'll bring my mom along, so please call Hannah. He started talking a lot, saying how relieved he was that Hannah was okay. It annoyed me, so I just said, okay, see you tonight, and hung up. Right after that, I went to see my mother-in-law in the hospital. She looked happy to see me and called my name. I apologized for her feeling sick, but I needed to know the truth. I found a box in her closet and showed it to her. She started crying. She said, Sarah, I'm really sorry. Ken is my ex-husband's stepchild. 5 years ago, they told me they were in love, even though they're not related by blood. They're both my kids. I told them it wasn't right, and Hannah got upset and left. I haven't heard from her since. I should have told you earlier, but I didn't want to upset you with their old photos. Don't worry. I don't know where Hannah is now, and I'm pretty sure she's not in touch with Ken. She looked me straight in the eyes, and I could tell she was telling the truth. Ken still talks to Hannah. Actually, he introduced me to her years ago. I told my mother-in-law, and she cried again. But you're married, I pointed out. I'm sorry, it's not your fault. But I can't stay married to Ken anymore. I'm going to divorce him. Don't apologize to me. It's my mistake for not noticing. I'm sorry, she said. I couldn't hold back my tears either. I left the hospital room and headed to the house where my mom, Ken, and Hannah were waiting. When I got there, they were all waiting for me. I sat down and immediately showed them the pictures. You two were in a relationship and I'm divorcing you, I said. Ken didn't seem bothered and said, yeah, that's true. Being family and being in a relationship are different. We were happy as a family. Wasn't Mom happy too? What's wrong with that? We don't need to get divorced, he said with his usual bright smile. Hannah, I'm sorry for not telling you earlier, but I didn't mean to break up your family. I don't think we need to get divorced, she said. I was furious. Hearing them talk like that made me shake with anger. That's ridiculous. This is cheating. How can I stay in a family with someone like that? I shouted at them loudly. Hey, calm down. If you want a divorce, that's okay. I tried to be a good family member. Since you're the one asking for it, we'll make it a friendly divorce. Ken said something I didn't quite get. What? How can you call this friendly? This is a huge betrayal. I'm going to ask for alimony from both of you, I exclaimed. Okay, sure. I'll pay whatever you ask for. Just don't tell my mom. And let's say the reason for the divorce is just differences in personality. I already told your mom everything. She was upset. I told her about the divorce, Ken said. What? Why would you do that? He lost his cool and yelled loudly in response to my words. Hannah, why did you tell her too? She cried. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the alimony. Goodbye, I said as I left the house with my mother. She told me, you handled that well, and hugged me tightly. I cried loudly, letting out all my emotions into her embrace. Now I realized that Ken never really cared about me. He just wanted a wife to make his mom happy. I thought I wanted to marry him too, and maybe we were happy as a family, But I can't forgive myself for not seeing the betrayal sooner. I'm just glad I figured it out now and could get a divorce. Later, my lawyer finalized the divorce successfully. I asked for alimony from both Ken and Hannah. But Hannah didn't have money, and she was upset with Ken for only paying his share. Their relationship soured, and they decided to split up. I couldn't afford to pay the alimony, so I started working double shifts at the bar where I used to work. After my mother-in-law left the hospital, she was upset with Ken and warned him that if he ever sees Hannah again, she'll cut ties with him. Despite everything, my mother-in-law and I still keep in touch, and we sometimes go out for treats. I'm relieved that she's out of the hospital and seems to be doing well. Right now, I'm staying with my parents. I'm busy getting ready for the beauty salon where I used to work to reopen. Once things settle down a bit more, I'll move out and live on my own again. I'm not jealous anymore when I hear about my friends who are married. Until I meet someone special again, I'll just keep working hard.
I do, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of joy and trepidation. The words echoed through the small chapel, sealing my fate in ways I couldn't have imagined. Joe beamed at me, his dark eyes twinkling with love and promise. As we turned to face our small gathering of family and friends, I caught sight of my new mother-in-law, Brenda. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Hartley," the officiant announced. The room erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. My mind was racing, replaying the whirlwind romance that had led to this moment. Just 6 months ago, I was drowning in grief after losing my mother. Now, here I was, starting a new chapter of my life. As we made our way down the aisle, Joe squeezed my hand. "You okay, Lily?" he whispered. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just overwhelmed," I replied. The reception was a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts. I found myself constantly searching the crowd for Brenda, feeling an inexplicable need to keep her in my sights. "Lily, darling!" Brenda's saccharine voice cut through the chatter. She glided towards us, arms outstretched. "Welcome to the family, dear." Her embrace was stiff, her perfume cloying. As she pulled away, she gripped my shoulders, her manicured nails digging in slightly. "We're going to be so close, you and I, like mother and daughter." I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. Joe, oblivious to the tension, wrapped an arm around his mother. "Isn't this great, Mom? I couldn't be happier." Brenda's eyes never left mine. "Oh yes, it's just wonderful." The rest of the evening passed in a haze. As we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, Brenda cornered me near the coat check. "Lily, dear," she began, her voice low, "I hate to bring this up on your special day, but I've been so worried lately." I frowned, concern creeping in. "What's wrong, Brenda?" She sighed dramatically. "It's just, the house feels so empty since Joe moved out. I'm not as young as I used to be, you know." The thought of living alone? My heart sank as I realized where this was going. Before I could respond, Joe appeared at my side. "Ready to go, Mrs. Hartley?" he asked, grinning. I nodded, grateful for the interruption. As we walked away, I glanced back to see Brenda watching us, a calculating look in her eyes. 2 weeks later, we returned from our honeymoon to find Brenda waiting on our doorstep, suitcases in tow. "Surprise!" she exclaimed, rushing to embrace Joe. "I've decided to take you up on your offer to stay for a while." Joe looked bewildered. "Offer? Mom, what are you talking about?" Brenda's lower lip trembled. "Oh, Joey, don't you remember? We discussed it at the wedding. You said I should come stay with you and Lily if I was feeling lonely." I watched in horror as Joe's face softened. "Of course. Mom, I'm sorry, I must have forgotten. Right, Lily? We did discuss this, didn't we?" Trapped, I nodded weakly. "Yes, of course. Welcome, Brenda." As we helped her move her belongings inside, I caught Brenda smirking at me when Joe wasn't looking. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the battle I was about to face. That night, as Joe slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. How had my fresh start turned into this? I was a doctor, for heaven's sake. I saved lives every day. Surely, I could handle one meddling mother-in-law. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would test every ounce of my strength and patience. The shrill beeping of my alarm jolted me awake. I groaned, reaching for my phone to silence it. 4:30 a.m. Another early shift at the ER. As I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Joe, I caught a whiff of something burning. Panic surged through me as I rushed downstairs. only to find Brenda in the kitchen, surrounded by smoke. "Oh, good morning, dear," she chirped, waving a dishcloth at the smoking toaster. "I thought I'd make you breakfast before your shift." I forced a smile, my heart still racing. "That's thoughtful, Brenda, but I really need to get ready." Her face fell. "But I went to all this trouble. The least you could do is sit down and eat." Guilt gnawed at me as I glanced at the clock. "I'm sorry, I just don't have time." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "I see. Well, don't let me keep you from your important work." The drive to the hospital was tense, my mind replaying Brenda's words. By the time I arrived, I was already exhausted. "Rough night, Dr. Hartley?" my colleague Sarah asked as I entered the ER. I sighed. "You have no idea." The shift was brutal. A multi-car pileup had us working nonstop for hours. As I was finishing up with a patient, my phone buzzed. A text from Joe. "Mom says you left without eating. Everything okay?" I bit back a groan. Before I could respond, Sarah called out, "Lily, we need you. Cardiac arrest coming in." By the time I got home, I was dead on my feet. The house was spotless, and the aroma of a home-cooked meal filled the air. "Welcome home, honey," Joe greeted me with a kiss. "Mom made dinner. Isn't she amazing?" Brenda appeared, all smiles. "I hope you're hungry, Lily. I've been cooking all day." I plastered on a smile. "It smells wonderful. Thank you, Brenda." As we sat down to eat, Brenda dominated the conversation, regaling Joe with tales of her day. I pushed my food around, too tired to eat. "Lily, dear," Brenda's voice cut through my haze. "Don't you like the food? I made it especially for you." "It's delicious," I lied. "I'm just tired." Joe frowned. "Maybe you're working too hard, honey. Mom was saying earlier that she's worried about you." I looked up, startled. "She was?" Brenda nodded, her eyes wide with feigned concern. "Of course, dear. I told Joey how you rushed out this morning without eating. It's not healthy." "I had an early shift," I started to explain, but Brenda cut me off. "And you're always so tired when you get home. It's not fair to Joey, is it? He needs a wife, not a zombie." Joe shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, I'm sure Lily's doing her best." "Of course she is." Brenda patted his hand. I just worry, that's all. Maybe if she cut back her hours." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "I'm going to bed. Good night." As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I heard Joe and Brenda's muffled voices downstairs. My stomach churned with anxiety. How had I become the bad guy in my own home? The next morning, I woke to find a note from Joe. "Had to leave early for a meeting. Mom's making breakfast. Love you." I steeled myself before heading downstairs. Brenda was at the stove, humming cheerfully. "Good morning, Lily," she said without turning around. "I hope you slept well. I was just telling Joey how worried I am about you." I gritted my teeth. "Brenda, we need to talk." She turned, her face a mask of innocence. "Of course, dear. What about?" As I opened my mouth to speak, my phone rang. The hospital. Another emergency. Brenda's lips curved into a smirk. "Duty calls, I suppose. We'll talk later, dear. Have a good day at work." As I rushed out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing control of my life, one day at a time. The ER doors burst open as paramedics rushed in with a critical patient. "Female, mid-60s, possible heart attack," one shouted. My heart nearly stopped. The woman on the gurney was Brenda. "Lily," she gasped, reaching for my hand. "I'm so sorry." I pushed my emotions aside and snapped into doctor mode. "Get her to Bay 3, stat!" Hours later, I slumped against the wall outside Brenda's room, exhausted. We'd stabilized her, but it had been touch and go. Joe appeared, his face pale with worry. "How is she?" "She's stable," I assured him, "but she'll need to stay for observation." He hugged me tightly. "Thank God you were here. I don't know what I'd do without either of you." Guilt gnawed at me. Despite everything, I'd saved Brenda's life. But as I watched Joe fuss over his mother, I couldn't help but wonder, would she see this as a peace offering or another reason to resent me? The next few days were a whirlwind. I juggled my shifts with visiting Brenda, all while trying to keep our home running smoothly. Joe was a constant presence at his mother's bedside, leaving me to handle everything else. On the day of Brenda's discharge, I arrived at the hospital to find her holding court with a group of nurses. "Oh, Lily dear," she cooed as I entered. "I was just telling these lovely ladies how fortunate I am to have such a dedicated daughter-in-law. She's been working herself to the bone, hasn't she?" The nurses nodded sympathetically, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this experience had changed things between us. That hope was short-lived. As soon as we got home, Brenda's sweet facade crumbled. "Well, I suppose I should be grateful you didn't let me die," she sniffed. "Though it would have been nice if you'd visited more." Poor Joey was so worried. I bit my tongue, reminding myself she was still recovering. "I'm sorry, Brenda. I was trying to keep things running smoothly here." She waved dismissively. Yes, always so busy with your important job. Speaking of which, don't you think it's time you took a break? After all, I'll need someone to look after me while I recover." My jaw dropped. "Brenda, I can't just quit my job." "Why not?" she challenged. "Joey makes enough to support us all. And really, Lily, what kind of wife puts her career before her family?" Before I could respond, Joe walked in. "Everything okay in here?" Brenda's eyes instantly filled with tears. "Oh, Joey, I was just telling Lily how overwhelmed I feel. The doctor said I need constant care, and with Lily working such long hours." Joe frowned, turning to me. "Honey, maybe you should take some time off, just until Mom's back on her feet." I stared at him, disbelieving. "Joe, I can't just—" "Please, Lily," he pleaded. "For me, for us." I felt the walls closing in. My career, my independence, everything I'd worked for was slipping away. That night, I tossed and turned, Joe's words echoing in my head. By morning, I'd made my decision. With shaking hands, I dialed the hospital. "Dr. Reeves? It's Lily Hartley. I need to take a leave of absence." As I hung up, I caught sight of Brenda in the doorway, a triumphant smile on her face. "Oh, Lily," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I'm so glad you're finally putting family first. Now be a dear and fetch my breakfast, won't you? I'm feeling a bit weak this morning." As I trudged downstairs, the reality of my situation hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd saved Brenda's life, only to become a prisoner in my own home. How had it come to this? And more importantly, how was I going to survive it? The days blurred together in a haze of endless chores and Brenda's constant demands. I'd gone from saving lives to folding laundry and preparing meals that were never quite good enough for my mother-in-law's discerning palate. "Lily, dear," Brenda's shrill voice pierced through my thoughts. "Be a lamb and fetch my reading glasses. I seem to have misplaced them again." I bit back a sigh, forcing a smile. "Of course, Brenda. I'll look for them right away." As I searched the house, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back at me was a stranger, pale, tired, with dark circles under her eyes. What had happened to the confident doctor I used to be? "Lily," Brenda called again, impatience lacing her tone. "What's taking so long?" I found the glasses perched on top of her head and wordlessly handed them to her. She sniffed. "Really, Lily? You'd think a doctor would be more observant. Oh, wait. You're not a doctor anymore, are you?" The word stung, but I swallowed my retort. Joe would be home soon, and I couldn't bear another argument. That evening, as we sat down to dinner, Brenda launched into her usual critique of my cooking. "The chicken's a bit dry, don't you think, Joey? And these vegetables are terribly overcooked." Joe, engrossed in his phone, merely grunted in response. "You know," Brenda continued, "I was thinking, now that Lily's not working, perhaps we should consider redecorating. This house could use a woman's touch." I nearly choked on my water. "Excuse me?" Brenda waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't worry, dear. I'll handle everything. After all, I have much more experience in these matters." "This is our home, Brenda," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed anger. "Joe and I like it the way it is." She turned to Joe, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Joey, don't you think the house could use some sprucing up? Your father and I always kept our home so lovely." Joe finally looked up from his phone. Yeah, sure, whatever you think, Mom." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. Outside, I gulped in the cool night air, trying to calm my racing heart. How had I let things get this far? I was a prisoner in my own home, my identity slowly being erased by Brenda's constant manipulations. As I paced the backyard, a memory surfaced. My mother's voice, strong and clear. "Never let anyone dim your light, Lily. You're meant to shine." Tears pricked my eyes. What would my mom think if she could see me now? The back door creaked open, and Joe stepped out. "Lily? You okay?" I turned to face him, suddenly angry. "No, Joe. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time." He frowned. "What are you talking about? Your mother, Joe. The way she treats me, the way she's taken over our lives. I can't do this anymore." Joe's face hardened. "Come on, Lily. Mom's just trying to help. You're being oversensitive." "Oversensitive?" I laughed bitterly. I gave up my career, my independence, everything for you and your mother. And you can't even see what's happening. What's happening is that you're acting ungrateful, Joe snapped. Mom's done nothing but try to make our lives easier? I stared at him, realizing with a sinking heart that I was truly alone in this battle. You're right, Joe. I am ungrateful. Ungrateful that I married a man who can't see his wife drowning right in front of him. With that, I stormed past him into the house, ignoring Brenda's inquiring looks. In our bedroom, I pulled out a suitcase and began throwing clothes into it. As I zipped it shut, I caught sight of my medical ID badge lying forgotten on the dresser. I picked it up, running my thumb over my name and title. Dr. Lily Hartley, Emergency Medicine. In that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't change Brenda, and I couldn't make Joe see the truth. But I could change myself. It was time to reclaim my life, whatever the cost. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by a whirlwind of activity, my hands raw from scrubbing and chopping. Brenda's voice rang out from the living room where she sat directing operations like a general. Lily, dear, don't forget the petit fours need to be arranged just so, and make sure the champagne is properly chilled. I gritted my teeth, fighting back the urge to scream. Brenda's grand party had consumed our lives for weeks. My suitcase, packed in a moment of desperation, still sat hidden in our closet. I hadn't been able to bring myself to leave, not yet. Joe breezed into the kitchen, adjusting his tie. Wow, honey, everything looks great. Mom's really outdone herself this time, hasn't she? I froze, the knife in my hand trembling slightly. Joe, I've been cooking and cleaning for days. Your mother hasn't lifted a finger. He frowned, confusion clouding his features. But Mom said she's been working tirelessly on this party. She even mentioned how you've been struggling to keep up. Before I could respond, Brenda swept into the room, resplendent in a glittering gown. Joey, darling, don't you look handsome? Lily, why aren't you dressed yet? The guests will be arriving any minute. I looked down at my flour-stained apron and disheveled appearance. I've been busy preparing everything, Brenda. I haven't had time to... Tsk, tsk, Brenda interrupted, shaking her head. Really, Lily, I expected better from you. This party is so important to me. Couldn't you have made more of an effort? Joe shifted uncomfortably. Mom, maybe you're being a little harsh. Lily's been working hard. Brenda's eyes welled with tears. Oh, Joey, I'm just so disappointed. I wanted everything to be perfect. After all I've been through, is that too much to ask? As Joe moved to comfort his mother, the doorbell rang. Guests had begun to arrive. Lily, go make yourself presentable, Brenda ordered, her tone brooking no argument. And do hurry. The next few hours were a blur of forced smiles and polite small talk. I circulated the room, refilling glasses and passing hors d'oeuvres, all while Brenda held court, regaling her friends with tales of her recovery and how she'd single-handedly planned this magnificent soiree. And of course, I couldn't have done it without my dear daughter-in-law, Brenda announced, beckoning me over. Lily, darling, come here and tell everyone how much you've enjoyed helping me. All eyes turned to me, expectant. I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my back as I struggled to find words. I'm always happy to help family, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Brenda's smile tightened. Oh, come now, Lily. Don't be modest. Tell them about all the wonderful ideas you contributed. Oh, wait, she paused, her eyes glittering maliciously. I forgot. You didn't contribute any ideas, did you? You were too busy moping about your lost career to be of any real help. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Joe, standing nearby, looked stricken. Mom, what are you saying? Brenda turned to him, her face a mask of innocence. Oh, Joey, I'm just trying to help Lily come out of her shell. She's been so withdrawn lately. I worry about her, you know. I stood there, humiliation burning through me, as Brenda continued to twist the knife. The room began to spin, voices blurring into a cacophony of whispers and judgmental stares. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I wouldn't take this anymore. Without a word, I turned and walked out of the room, ignoring the startled exclamations behind me. I climbed the stairs, my legs shaking, and entered our bedroom. The suitcase was still there, waiting. As I reached for it, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was a stranger, beaten down, hollow-eyed, a shadow of her former self. But in her eyes, I saw a flicker of something I hadn't seen in months. Determination. I grabbed the suitcase and my car keys. It was time to reclaim my life, my identity. As I descended the stairs, I could hear Brenda's voice, still holding court in the living room. Joe appeared at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes widening as he took in my appearance. "Lily, what are you doing?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'm leaving, Joe. I can't do this anymore." As I walked past him towards the door, I realized that this wasn't just about escaping Brenda's tyranny. It was about finding myself again, the strong, capable woman I used to be, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I stood at the front door, my hand on the knob, ready to walk out on everything I'd known for the past year. Joe's voice, tinged with panic, cut through my resolve. "Lily, please, don't do this. We can talk about it." I turned to face him, my voice steady. "There's nothing left to say, Joe. I can't live like this anymore." Just as I opened the door, a commotion from the living room caught our attention. A woman's voice, filled with excitement, rose above the murmur of the party. "It's her! It's really her!" Curiosity overrode my desire to flee. I followed Joe back to the party, where we found a silver-haired woman pointing at me, her eyes wide with recognition. "You're Dr. Hartley, aren't you? The one who saved my life at Rosie's Cafe last year." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. I recognized the woman now, Abigail Thompson, the patient I'd resuscitated during my lunch break months ago. Yes, that's me," I stammered, caught off guard by this unexpected turn of events. Abigail rushed forward, grasping my hands. "I've been trying to find you for months to thank you properly. You disappeared from the hospital before I could." Brenda, looking flustered, tried to interject. "Now, Abigail, dear, this is hardly the time." But Abigail was unstoppable. She turned to the crowd, her voice ringing with emotion. "This woman is a hero. She performed CPR on me when I had a heart attack, kept me alive until the ambulance arrived. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for her quick thinking and skill." The room erupted in applause and exclamations of admiration. I stood there, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in attention. Joe looked at me with a mixture of pride and confusion. Abigail continued, "But wait, I don't understand. Brenda told us you were just a housewife. Why aren't you practicing medicine anymore?" The room fell silent once again. I could feel Brenda's glare burning into me, daring me to speak the truth. In that moment, something inside me broke free. The months of suppressed anger, frustration, and pain came pouring out. "I gave up my career because of Brenda," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. "She manipulated her way into our home, made me feel worthless, and slowly stripped away everything that made me who I am." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Joe's face paled as he looked between me and his mother. Brenda, her face contorted with rage, stepped forward. "How dare you? After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me, by humiliating me in front of my friends." Abigail, sensing the tension, placed a protective hand on my arm. "Brenda, what's going on here? What have you done to this poor girl?" As Brenda sputtered and tried to defend herself, more guests began to speak up. They shared stories of how Brenda had spoken ill of me behind my back, painting me as lazy and incompetent. Joe, looking shell-shocked, finally found his voice. "Mom, is this true? Have you been lying to us all this time?" Brenda's facade crumbled. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally and finding none. In a last-ditch effort, she turned to me, her voice dripping with venom. "You ungrateful little witch. I welcomed you into this family, and this is how you repay me? By turning everyone against me?" The room collectively recoiled at her outburst. Joe stepped between us, his face a mask of disbelief and disappointment. "That's enough, Mom. I think you should leave." As Brenda was escorted out, her protests fading into the night, I stood there, trembling. The truth was finally out, but at what cost? Abigail squeezed my hand reassuringly. "You're not alone, Dr. Hartley. We're all here for you." I looked around the room, seeing sympathy and support in the faces of Brenda's former friends. Joe approached me, his eyes filled with remorse. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Can we talk? Please." As the party disintegrated around us, I faced the biggest decision of my life. Could I forgive Joe for his blindness? Could we rebuild what Brenda had so systematically destroyed? Or was it too late to salvage the pieces of my shattered life? The aftermath of Brenda's party left our house in eerie silence. Joe and I sat at opposite ends of the couch, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between us. Abigail had insisted on staying, her presence a comforting buffer. "I think," Abigail began softly, "that we need to get the whole story out in the open. Joe, Lily's been through hell, and you need to hear it all." Joe nodded, his face ashen. "Please, Lily, I need to understand." Taking a deep breath, I started from the beginning. The words poured out of me like a flood. Brenda's manipulation, the constant criticism, the isolation. With each revelation, Joe's face crumpled further, disbelief giving way to horror. "I had no idea," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" Before I could answer, the front door burst open. Cliff, Joe's father, stormed in, his face thunderous. "What in God's name is going on here?" he demanded. "Brenda called me in hysterics, saying you've turned the whole town against her." Abigail stood, her small frame radiating strength. "Cliff, sit down. There's a lot you need to hear." For the next hour, Abigail and I laid out the entire sordid tale. Cliff's anger slowly morphed into shock, then shame. "I knew Brenda could be difficult," he mumbled, "but this is beyond anything I could have imagined." Just as we finished, the door opened again. Brenda swept in, her eyes red-rimmed but defiant. "Well, I hope you're all happy," she spat. "My reputation is in tatters, thanks to you ungrateful." "That's enough, Brenda," Cliff cut her off, his voice steely. "I've heard everything. How could you do this to our family? To Lily?" Brenda's face contorted with rage. "How could I? How could she? She stole my son, turned him against me. I was just trying to protect our family." "By destroying mine," I shot back, years of pent-up anger finally breaking free. "You made my life a living hell, Brenda. You took everything from me, my career, my confidence, nearly my marriage." Joe stood, placing himself between Brenda and me. "Mom, I think you should leave. Now." Brenda's eyes widened in disbelief. "Joey, you can't mean that. After everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done?" Joe's voice rose. "You've lied, manipulated, and abused the woman I love. Get out of our house, now." For a moment, Brenda looked like she might argue further. Then, with a final venomous glare at me, she turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Cliff cleared his throat, looking years older than he had an hour ago. "Lily, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do." I held up a hand, suddenly exhausted. "Thank you, Cliff, but right now, I think I need some time." As Cliff and Abigail prepared to leave, Joe turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Lily, please, can we talk?" I looked at him. This man I'd loved enough to sacrifice everything for. Could I forgive him for being so blind? Could we rebuild what Brenda had so systematically destroyed? "I don't know, Joe," I said honestly. "I need time to think, to figure out who I am without Brenda's shadow looming over me." Joe nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. But please, don't give up on us. I love you, Lily. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." As I watched him walk away, I felt a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. The truth was finally out, Brenda's reign of terror over. But the cost had been high. Could I reclaim the pieces of my shattered life? And more importantly, did I want to? I turned to Abigail, who had become an unexpected ally in this storm. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She squeezed my hand reassuringly. "You heal, Dr. Hartley, and then you decide what kind of life you want to build from the ashes of the old one." As I stood there on the precipice of an uncertain future, I realized that for the first time in months I felt something I'd almost forgotten: hope. 6 months after Brenda's dramatic exit from our lives, I stood outside the hospital, my heart racing. Today marked my return to the ER, a day I'd both longed for and feared. "You've got this, Dr. Hartley," Abigail's voice came from beside me. Our unexpected friendship had become my anchor during the tumultuous months of healing and self-discovery. I took a deep breath and stepped through the doors, the familiar antiseptic smell washing over me. As I made my way to the locker room, I caught sight of my reflection. The woman staring back at me was different from the one who'd left this hospital over a year ago. Stronger, wiser, with a glint of hard-won confidence in her eyes. My first shift was a whirlwind of activity. As I treated patients, my hands moving with practiced skill, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This was where I belonged. During a rare quiet moment, I stepped out for some air. To my surprise, Joe was waiting by the entrance, a bouquet of flowers in his hand. "I wanted to be here for your first day back," he said, his voice tinged with hope and uncertainty. Over the past months, we'd been slowly rebuilding our relationship, attending couples therapy, and having long, honest conversations. It hadn't been easy, but we were both committed to making it work. "Thank you," I said, accepting the flowers. "It means a lot that you're here." Just then my pager went off. "I have to go," I said apologetically. Joe nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Go save lives, Dr. Hartley. I'll be here when you're done." As I rushed back inside, I felt a surge of gratitude for how far we'd come. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of emergencies and quick decisions. As I was preparing to leave, a commotion at the entrance caught my attention. My blood ran cold as I recognized the voice. Brenda. She was being wheeled in on a gurney, clearly in distress. Our eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. In that instant, I had a choice to make. I could walk away, let someone else handle her case. After all she'd put me through, no one would blame me. But as I looked at her, vulnerable and afraid, I remembered why I became a doctor in the first place. To help people, regardless of who they were or what they'd done. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. "I'll take this one," I said to the surprised nurse. As I began examining Brenda, her eyes widened with recognition and, was that shame? "Lily," she whispered, "I don't deserve your help." I met her gaze steadily. "You're my patient, Brenda. That's all that matters right now." Over the next few hours, I worked tirelessly to stabilize Brenda's condition. It turned out to be a severe panic attack, brought on by the stress of her isolation and the weight of her actions. As she recovered, Brenda looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Lily, for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I regret what I did to you." I nodded, feeling a weight I didn't know I was carrying lift from my shoulders. "Thank you for saying that, Brenda. It means a lot." As I left her room, I found Joe waiting outside. He pulled me into a tight embrace. "I saw what you did in there," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're incredible, Lily. I'm so proud of you." In that moment, surrounded by the bustle of the hospital, held in the arms of the man I loved, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been long and painful, but it had led me here, back to myself, stronger and more resilient than ever. As we walked out of the hospital hand in hand, I realized that this wasn't just an ending, but a new beginning. I had reclaimed my career, my self-respect, and my voice, and I vowed never to let anyone silence me again. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities. There would be challenges, of course, but I was ready to face them head-on, because now I knew my own strength, and I had a support system that wouldn't let me fall. As the sun set on my first day back, I smiled, feeling truly at peace for the first time in years. The road ahead might be uncertain, but one thing was clear. Dr. Lily Hartley was back, and she was here to stay. The screen of George's phone illuminated the darkness, casting an eerie glow across our bedroom. I hadn't meant to snoop, but the constant buzzing at 2 a.m. had roused me from sleep. Now, with trembling fingers, I scrolled through a conversation that threatened to shatter my world. "I miss you already," the message read. "Last night was incredible." My stomach lurched. This couldn't be happening. Not to us. Not after 30 years of marriage. I set the phone down, my mind reeling. How long had this been going on? Who was she? The questions swirled, each one more painful than the last. "Anna," George's groggy voice startled me. "What are you doing up?" I turned to face him, my voice barely above a whisper. "Who's Sarah?" The silence that followed was deafening. George's face, illuminated by the moonlight streaming through our bedroom window, contorted into a mix of shock and guilt. "It's not what you think," he stammered, sitting up in bed. "Really?" I spat, my sadness quickly giving way to anger. "Because I think it's exactly what I think." "How long, George?" He ran a hand through his thinning hair, avoiding my gaze. "Anna, please, can we talk about this in the morning?" "No," I said firmly, standing up. "We're talking about this now. How long have you been cheating on me?" George sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. 6 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal. "Does she know about me? About the girls?" I asked, thinking of our 2 daughters sleeping down the hall. George nodded slowly. "She knows I'm married, yes." I laughed bitterly. "Well, isn't that just wonderful? At least you had the decency to tell your mistress about your family." "Anna, I'm sorry," George began, but I cut him off. "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want to hear your excuses right now." I grabbed my robe and headed for the door, needing to put some distance between us before I said something I couldn't take back. "Where are you going?" George called after me. "To sleep in the guest room," I replied without turning around. "I can't even look at you right now." As I made my way down the hall, I paused at our daughters' rooms. Lily, 25, and Rose, 22, were both home for the summer. How was I going to tell them their father had betrayed us all? I slipped into the guest room, closing the door behind me. As I sank onto the bed, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. How had we gotten here? Where had I gone wrong? My phone buzzed on the nightstand, startling me. It was a text from my sister-in-law, Lucy. "You up? I need to talk to you." I hesitated for a moment before replying. "Can't sleep? What's wrong?" The response came quickly. "I think Tom's cheating on me. Can we meet tomorrow?" My heart sank. Was this some sort of twisted family curse? "Of course," I typed back. "Coffee at 10, the usual place?" "Perfect. Thank you, Anna." I set the phone down, my mind racing. First George, now possibly Tom. What was happening to our family? As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I made a decision. I wouldn't let George's betrayal define me. I wouldn't let it destroy our family, but I also wouldn't let him get away with it. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Lucy. We'd compare notes, make a plan. And then, we'd show George and Tom exactly what happens when you mess with the women in this family. I closed my eyes, finally drifting off to sleep. In my dreams, I saw myself standing tall, surrounded by my daughters and sister-in-laws. We were strong, we were united, and we were ready for a fight. The next morning, I found myself at our usual coffee shop waiting for Lucy. My eyes were puffy from a sleepless night, and my hands shook as I clutched my latte. When Lucy walked in, I could see the same weariness etched on her face. "Anna," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Thank you for meeting me. I didn't know who else to turn to." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We're family, Lucy. We stick together." Lucy's eyes welled up with tears. "I found receipts," she whispered. "Expensive dinners, hotel rooms. Tom's been lying to me for months." My heart sank. It was like looking in a mirror, seeing my own pain reflected in Lucy's eyes. "I'm so sorry," I said. "I know exactly how you feel, George. He's been cheating on me too." Lucy's eyes widened in shock. "George, but I thought—" "Oh, Anna, what are we going to do?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter, Rose. "Mom, can you come home? Grandma Eleanor's here and she's being awful." I groaned. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, was the last person I wanted to deal with right now. "I'm sorry, Lucy. I have to go. Family emergency." Lucy nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Go. We'll talk later." I rushed home, my mind racing. What could Eleanor want? As I pulled into the driveway, I saw her sleek Mercedes parked out front. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself and walked inside. The scene that greeted me made my blood boil. Eleanor was in the living room, fawning over a framed photo of her grandson, Tom and Lucy's boy, while completely ignoring the beautiful portraits of my girls on the mantel. "Anna, there you are," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I was just telling the girls how wonderful it would be if they could be more like their cousin. He's studying law at Harvard, you know?" I saw Rose and Lily exchange a look of hurt and anger. Lily, always the more outspoken of the two, stepped forward. "Grandma, I just got accepted into medical school. Isn't that worth celebrating, too?" Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, that's nice, dear, but it's not quite the same as law school, is it?" I'd had enough. "Eleanor," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger, "my daughters are brilliant, accomplished young women. They don't need to be compared to anyone." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Well, if you'd raised them properly, maybe they'd have achieved more by now. It's a shame George didn't have any sons. The family name will die out with him." The room fell silent. I could see the shock and hurt on my daughters' faces. Something inside me snapped. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my house right now." Eleanor looked stunned. "I beg your pardon?" "You heard me," I said, stepping closer. "I will not stand here and let you belittle my children. Your grandson isn't better than them just because he's a boy. Now leave before I say something I might regret." Eleanor huffed, gathering her designer purse. "Well, I never. George will hear about this, mark my words." As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I turned to my daughters. They both looked shell-shocked. "Mom," Rose said quietly, What's going on? You've never stood up to Grandma like that before. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. Girls, there's something I need to tell you. It's about your father. As I began to explain, I saw the hurt and betrayal bloom in their eyes. But beneath it, I saw something else too. A fierce determination that mirrored my own. In that moment, I knew. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The men in our lives might have let us down, but we had each other, and that was more than enough. The day after Eleanor's visit, I called an emergency meeting with Lucy and Margaret. We met at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, away from prying eyes and wagging tongues. I can't believe this is happening to all of us, Margaret said, stirring her tea absently. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and I knew she'd been crying. What do you mean, all of us? I asked, a sinking feeling in my stomach. Margaret took a shaky breath. I found out last week. He's been seeing his secretary for months. Lucy and I exchanged a glance. 3 brothers, 3 affairs. It couldn't be a coincidence. We need to do something, Lucy said, her voice low and determined. We can't let them get away with this. I nodded, feeling a surge of anger. You're right, but what? We spent the next hour brainstorming, our voices growing more animated as we shared ideas. By the time we left the cafe, we had the beginnings of a plan. Are you sure about this, Anna? Lucy asked as we stood in the parking lot. Once we start, there's no going back. I thought about George's betrayal, about Eleanor's disdain for my daughters, about the years I'd spent trying to be the perfect wife and mother. I'm sure, I said firmly. It's time we stood up for ourselves. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. We gathered evidence, consulted lawyers, and prepared for the confrontation to come. Through it all, I felt a growing sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. A week after our meeting, I was in the kitchen making dinner when George came home. He kissed me on the cheek, acting as if nothing had changed between us. How was your day, dear? He asked, reaching for a beer in the fridge. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. It was enlightening, I said carefully. I had lunch with Lucy and Margaret. George froze, his hand on the fridge door. Oh, he said, trying to sound casual. How are they? Not good, I said, watching his face closely. It seems your brothers have been keeping secrets too. The color drained from George's face. Anna, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, George, I snapped, my patience finally snapping. I know about Sarah, I know about the affair, and I know about your brother's affairs too. George stumbled back, shock written all over his face. How did you find out? It doesn't matter, I said, my voice cold. What matters is what happens next. Just then, the doorbell rang. George looked at me, confusion and fear in his eyes. Who's that? I smiled, a small, satisfied smile. That would be Lucy and Margaret, and they're lawyers. George's eyes widened in panic. Lawyers? Anna, what have you done? What I should have done a long time ago, I said, walking past him to answer the door. I'm taking back control of my life. As I opened the door, I saw Lucy and Margaret standing there, determination etched on their faces. Behind them stood 3 stern-looking men in suits, our lawyers. Are you ready? Lucy asked, her voice steady. I nodded, feeling a surge of strength. More than ready. As we walked back into the kitchen, George's face paled even further. I could see the realization dawning in his eyes. This was no longer just about his affair. This was about years of disrespect, of taking us for granted, of treating us like second-class citizens in our own families. George, I said, my voice ringing with newfound confidence, we need to talk. All of us. The look of fear on his face was almost satisfying. Almost. But I knew the real satisfaction would come when we finally got the justice and respect we deserved. As we all sat down at the kitchen table, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was it. The moment everything would change. And I was ready for it. The tension in our kitchen was palpable as George sat across from me, flanked by our lawyers. Lucy and Margaret had left with their own legal counsel, ready to confront their husbands. Now, it was just George and me, the remnants of our 30-year marriage crumbling between us. Anna, George began, his voice strained, can't we discuss this privately? We don't need lawyers involved. I fixed him with a steely gaze. We're well past that point, George. You made sure of that when you decided to sleep with Sarah. His face flushed with anger. It was a mistake, okay? I'm sorry, But do you really want to throw away our entire marriage over one indiscretion? One? I laughed bitterly. Don't insult my intelligence. I know it's been going on for months. George's lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Thompson, I advise you not to say anything further without consulting me. I turned to my own lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia. Show him what we found. Patricia pulled out a thick folder and slid it across the table. George's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. Bank statements, hotel receipts, text message logs. The evidence of his betrayal laid bare. How did you get all this? He whispered, his face ashen. It doesn't matter, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. What matters is that it's over, George. I want a divorce. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with finality. George slumped in his chair, defeated. Fine, he muttered, if that's what you want, but don't expect to take me for everything I'm worth. I built this life. I earned this money. I felt a surge of rage at his words. You built this life? I gave up my career to raise our daughters while you climbed the corporate ladder. I managed this household, supported your ambitions, put up with your mother's constant criticism. Don't you dare tell me I haven't earned my share. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. Mom, Grandma Eleanor is here. She's saying awful things about you and Dad. What's going on? My heart sank. Of course, Eleanor would get involved. I turned back to George, my resolve strengthening. Your mother is at our house right now, no doubt poisoning our daughters against me, I said, my voice cold. Is that part of your plan too? George looked genuinely surprised. I didn't tell her anything, Anna. I swear. It doesn't matter, I said, standing up. I need to go home and deal with this. As I gathered my things, George reached out and grabbed my arm. Anna, please, can't we work this out, for the girls' sake? I jerked my arm away, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. You should have thought about the girls before you started cheating, George. It's too late now. I left him sitting there, looking lost and broken. Part of me ached to comfort him, to fall back into the familiar patterns of our marriage. But I squashed that impulse. I had to be strong for myself and for my daughters. As I drove home, my mind raced. How much had Eleanor told the girls? How would I explain everything to them? And what would our future look like now, with the family torn apart? I pulled into our driveway, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. Through the living room window, I could see Eleanor gesticulating wildly, her face twisted with anger. Lily and Rose sat on the couch, looking shell-shocked. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car. It was time to face the music, to stand up not just to George, but to Eleanor and all the years of subtle put-downs and gender bias she represented. As I reached for the doorknob, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Whatever happened next would change our lives forever. But for the first time in years, I felt truly in control of my destiny. I opened the door, ready to fight for my daughters, my dignity, and our future. Thanksgiving Day arrived with a chill in the air that matched the icy tension in our home. As I prepared the turkey, my hands trembled slightly. Today was the day. The day I would shatter the facade of our perfect family. Lucy and Margaret arrived early, their faces a mix of determination and fear. We huddled in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. Are you sure about this, Anna? Lucy whispered, her eyes darting nervously towards the living room, where our husbands sat, oblivious to the storm about to break. I nodded, my jaw set. It's now or never. We can't live like this anymore. The doorbell rang, announcing Eleanor's arrival. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. As we gathered around the dining table, the air was thick with unspoken words. George sat at the head, carving the turkey with practiced ease, as if our world wasn't about to implode. Well, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Isn't this lovely? All of us together, although it would be nicer if we had some grandsons at the table. I saw Lily and Rose exchange a pained look. That was the final straw. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. All eyes turned to me. Anna? George asked, confusion etched on his face. What are you doing? Something I should have done a long time ago, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm telling the truth. Eleanor scoffed. What on earth are you talking about? I turned to face her, years of pent-up frustration bubbling to the surface. I'm talking about the way you've always favored boys over girls. The way you've made my daughters feel less than, and I'm talking about your son's infidelity? A collective gasp went around the table. George's face paled. George has been having an affair, I continued, my voice growing stronger, and he's not the only one. Tom and David have been unfaithful, too. Lucy and Margaret stood up, flanking me in a show of solidarity. It's true, Lucy said, her voice shaking slightly. We've all been betrayed. The room erupted into chaos. Eleanor was shouting, George was stammering excuses, and our children looked shell-shocked. Enough, I yelled, silencing the room. I've made my decision. I'm filing for divorce. George jumped to his feet. Anna, please, we can work this out. No, we can't, I cut him off. You've made your choices, George. Now I'm making mine. Eleanor turned on me, her face contorted with rage. You ungrateful woman, after everything this family has done for you. Done for me? I laughed bitterly. You mean belittled me, made me feel worthless, treated my daughters like second-class citizens? I turned to Lily and Rose, who were watching with wide eyes. Girls, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But I want you to know that you are valued, you are loved, and you are more than enough, just as you are. Tears welled up in their eyes as they nodded, understanding dawning on their faces. This is ridiculous, Eleanor sputtered. George, are you going to let her speak to me this way? But George remained silent, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. This facade of a perfect family ends now. We're done pretending. As I looked around the table at the shocked faces of our family, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years I felt truly free. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, I said, my voice laced with irony. I think it's time we all went home. As the family began to disperse, murmuring in shocked whispers, I caught Lucy and Margaret's eyes. They nodded, a silent agreement passing between us. We had taken the first step. There was no going back now. I watched as George slumped in his chair, head in his hands. Part of me ached for the man I had loved for so long, but a stronger part knew this was necessary. For me, for my daughters, and for all the women who had been silenced for too long. The facade had shattered. Now it was time to rebuild. The aftermath of our Thanksgiving revelation was like the eye of a hurricane, a deceptive calm before the real storm hit. I spent the next few days in a daze, fielding calls from shocked relatives and comforting my daughters. But I knew the worst was yet to come. A week after Thanksgiving, Lucy, Margaret, and I met at our lawyer's office. As we sat around the polished oak table, the gravity of our situation settled over us like a heavy blanket. Ladies, our lawyer Patricia began, I've reviewed your cases. I won't sugarcoat it. This won't be easy. Your husbands are powerful men with considerable resources. I felt a flicker of doubt, but quickly squashed it. We're prepared for a fight, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Lucy nodded, her face set with determination. We've been silent for too long. It's time to stand up for ourselves. Just then, Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her brow furrowing. It seems your husbands have made a preemptive move. They're calling a family meeting at Eleanor's house. Tonight. My stomach dropped. Eleanor's house, the lion's den. I exchanged worried glances with Lucy and Margaret. We don't have to go, Margaret said, her voice trembling slightly, but I knew we did. No, we need to face this head on. We can't let them control the narrative. As we pulled up to Eleanor's sprawling mansion that evening, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The three of us walked in together, a united front against whatever awaited us inside. The scene that greeted us was like something out of a twisted family drama. George, Tom, and David sat on one side of the room, their faces a mix of anger and desperation. Eleanor presided over the gathering from her ornate armchair, looking like a queen about to pass judgment. Well, well, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with disdain. The prodigal daughters-in-law return. I stepped forward, refusing to be intimidated. We're here to talk, Eleanor. That's all. George stood up, his face pleading. Anna, please. Can't we discuss this privately? We can work things out. Before I could respond, Lucy's voice rang out, clear and strong. There's nothing to discuss, Tom. I've already filed for divorce. The room erupted into chaos. David lunged at Margaret, grabbing her arm. You can't do this to me, he shouted. I watched in horror as Margaret stumbled, fear flashing across her face. Something inside me snapped. Enough, I roared, my voice cutting through the din. This ends now. We're not your property. We're not here to be controlled or manipulated. Eleanor rose from her chair, her face twisted with rage. You ungrateful women, after everything this family has given you. Given us? I laughed bitterly. You mean the constant criticism? The belittling of our daughters? The blind eye to your son's infidelities? I turned to face George, Tom, and David. We trusted you. We loved you. And you betrayed us in the worst possible way. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Then, to my shock, a slow clap started from the doorway. We all turned to see Lily and Rose standing there, pride shining in their eyes. Well said, Mom, Lily said, her voice strong. It's about time someone stood up to this toxic family dynamic. Eleanor sputtered, her face turning an alarming shade of red. How dare you? But Rose cut her off. No, Grandma. How dare you? How dare all of you treat our mothers this way? As I looked at my daughters, standing tall and unafraid, I felt a surge of pride and strength. This was why we were fighting. This was what it was all about. I turned back to face the room, my resolve stronger than ever. We're done being silent. We're done playing by your rules. From now on, we make our own path. The tension in the room was palpable, like a rubber band stretched to its breaking point. I knew that whatever happened next would change our lives forever, but as I stood there, flanked by my daughters and sister-in-laws, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. We were stronger together, and we were ready for whatever storm was about to break. The morning after our confrontation at Eleanor's house, I woke to a flurry of missed calls and text messages. My phone buzzed incessantly as I scrolled through them, my heart racing with each notification. Anna, we need to talk. Please. George. You'll regret this, all of you. Eleanor. Mom, are you okay? Call us. Lily. But the message that made my blood run cold came from our lawyer, Patricia. Emergency meeting. 9 a.m. Your husbands are trying to freeze your assets. I sprang into action, calling Lucy and Margaret as I threw on clothes. Within an hour, we were huddled in Patricia's office, the gravity of our situation weighing heavily on us. They're playing dirty, Patricia said, her voice grim. They filed for emergency orders to restrict your access to joint accounts, properties, everything. Lucy gasped, her face pale. Can they do that? Patricia nodded. They're claiming your flight risks, that you might try to hide or spend the money before the divorce proceedings. I felt a surge of anger. That's ridiculous. We've done nothing wrong. I know, Patricia said, but we need to act fast. We have a hearing this afternoon. The judge will decide whether to grant their request. As we left Patricia's office, my phone buzzed again. It was George. Against my better judgment, I answered. Anna, please. His voice was desperate. Let's talk about this. We can work it out. I felt a flicker of doubt, remembering the good times we'd shared. But then I thought of his betrayal, of Eleanor's constant belittling, of the years I'd spent feeling less than. It's too late, George, I said, my voice steady. You've made your choices. Now I'm making mine. The courthouse was a flurry of activity as we arrived. Our husbands were there, looking smug in their expensive suits. Eleanor sat behind them, her face a mask of disdain. As the hearing began, I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. What if the judge sided with them? What if we lost everything we'd worked for? But as our lawyer presented our case, I felt a surge of pride. We weren't the villains here. We were women standing up for ourselves, for our children, for our futures. The judge listened intently, his face unreadable. When he finally spoke, his words sent a shockwave through the courtroom. I'm denying the request for asset freezing, he said. There's no evidence of any intention to hide or misuse funds. Furthermore, he continued, fixing our husbands with a stern gaze, I'm ordering a full financial audit of all parties involved. I watched as the color drained from George's face. From the corner of my eye, I saw Tom and David exchange panicked looks. As we left the courtroom, I felt a mix of relief and trepidation. We'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. Eleanor cornered us in the hallway, her face twisted with fury. You think you've won? She hissed. This isn't over. You'll never get away with this. I stood tall, meeting her gaze. No, Eleanor, you're right. It's not over, but we're not backing down. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rose. Mom, there are reporters outside our house. They're asking about Dad's company. What's going on? My heart sank. I looked at Lucy and Margaret, seeing my own fear reflected in their eyes. What had we stumbled into? As we hurried out of the courthouse, dodging reporters and flashing cameras, I realized we were standing on the precipice of something much bigger than we'd anticipated. Our fight for justice had uncovered a web of deceit that went far beyond our marriages. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. We'd started this fight for ourselves, for our daughters. Now, it seemed, we were fighting for something much larger. As we climbed into the car, I turned to Lucy and Margaret. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. They nodded, determination etched on their faces. Whatever storm was coming, we'd face it together. The tables had turned, and there was no going back now. 1 year after that fateful Thanksgiving, I stood in the courtroom, my heart pounding as the judge prepared to deliver the final verdict in our divorce proceedings. Lucy and Margaret flanked me, our hands clasped tightly together. Across the aisle, George, Tom, and David sat with their lawyers, their faces a mix of anger and defeat. As the judge began to speak, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. This wasn't just about the end of our marriages. It was about reclaiming our lives, our dignity, and our futures. "In light of the evidence presented," the judge said, her voice clear and firm, "this court finds in favor of the plaintiffs. The divorce settlements will proceed as outlined, including equal division of assets and full custody of the children to the mothers." A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. I turned to Lucy and Margaret, tears of relief and joy streaming down our faces. We'd done it. We'd won. But the judge wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, "in light of the financial irregularities uncovered during these proceedings, I'm recommending a full investigation into the business practices of Thompson Industries." I watched as the color drained from George's face. The web of deceit we'd uncovered went far beyond our marriages. It had exposed years of corporate fraud and mismanagement. As we left the courthouse, a crowd of reporters surged forward. But it was Lily and Rose who pushed through first, enveloping me in a tight hug. "We're so proud of you, Mom," Lily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Rose nodded, her eyes shining. "You showed us what real strength looks like." Over their shoulders, I caught sight of Eleanor, standing alone at the edge of the crowd. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected to see anger or hatred, but instead I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes: respect. In the months that followed, our lives transformed in ways I never could have imagined. Lucy, Margaret, and I bought a sprawling house together, creating a new kind of family filled with laughter, love, and unwavering support. Our children thrived in this new environment. Lily pursued her medical career with renewed vigor, inspired by the strength she'd seen in us. Rose started a support group for children of divorce, turning our family's pain into a force for good. Even Eleanor surprised us. One day, she showed up at our door, her usual haughty demeanor replaced by a hesitant vulnerability. "I was wrong," she said simply. "About everything. I'd like to be a part of your lives if you'll have me." It wasn't easy, but slowly, we began to rebuild those bridges. Eleanor became a regular fixture at our family dinners, her previous disdain for her granddaughters replaced by genuine interest and affection. As for George and his brothers, they faced the consequences of their actions. The investigation into Thompson Industries revealed years of financial misdeeds. The company crumbled, taking their fortunes and reputations with it. One evening, as we all sat around our large dining table, Lucy, Margaret, our children, and even Eleanor, I looked around and felt a surge of gratitude. We'd been through hell, but we'd come out stronger on the other side. "You know," Lucy said, raising her glass, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for what we went through. Look at what we've built." Margaret nodded, her eyes misty. "We're more than just survivors. We're thrivers." As we clinked our glasses together, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We'd redefined what family meant. We'd shown our children the power of resilience, the strength of women standing together. Our story wasn't just about revenge or justice. It was about transformation, about rising from the ashes of betrayal and building something beautiful and strong. As I looked at the faces of these women, my sisters in all but blood, and our children, I knew that whatever challenges life might throw our way, we'd face them together. We were unbreakable, and in that moment, I realized that this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. The start of a new chapter, filled with hope, love, and the unbreakable bonds of our chosen family. The scent of lavender and lemon polish hung in the air as I scrubbed the kitchen counter, my mind drifting to happier times. Times when Alice's laughter filled this very room, her pigtails bouncing as she chased her father around land. Now, at 65, I found myself once again preparing to comfort my daughter, though the circumstances were far from childish games. The phone rang, startling me from my reverie. Alice's name flashed on the screen. "Mom?" Her voice trembled. "I need you." My heart clenched. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Can you come over? I don't know what to do." Within the hour, I was at Alice's doorstep, a plate of her favorite oatmeal raisin cookies in hand. She opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. "Oh, honey," I said, pulling her into a hug. "What happened?" Alice led me to the living room, sinking onto the plush sofa. I set the cookies on the coffee table and sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. "I got this in the mail today," she said, handing me an envelope. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, my eyes widening as I read the typed message. "Your husband isn't who you think he is. Ask him about Rachel and the kids in Oakville." "What does this mean?" I asked, though a sinking feeling in my stomach told me I already knew. Alice shook her head, tears welling up. "I don't know. Sam's on a business trip. He's not answering his phone." I squeezed her hand. "Have you tried calling his office? They said he took a personal day." She let out a bitter laugh. "A personal day in Oakville, apparently." My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Sam had always seemed like such a devoted husband. Charming, attentive, the perfect match for my ambitious Alice. But now, maybe it's just a misunderstanding, I offered, though the words felt hollow even to me. Alice stood abruptly, pacing the room. "A misunderstanding? Mom, he's been lying to me. There's another family out there somewhere." "We don't know that for sure," I said, trying to calm her. "Let's not jump to conclusions." She whirled on me, eyes flashing. "Why are you defending him?" "I'm not," I said quickly. "I just think we need more information before we do anything rash." Alice deflated, collapsing back onto the sofa. "You're right. I'm sorry. I can't believe this is happening." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, remembering how small she used to feel in my embrace. Now she was a successful businesswoman, strong and independent. But in this moment, she was my little girl again, needing her mother's comfort. "We'll figure this out," I promised. "Together." Just then, the front door opened. Sam's voice called out, "Alice, I'm home early." Alice stiffened beside me, her eyes meeting mine in panic. I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze as Sam entered the living room, his smile faltering as he took in the scene. "What's going on?" he asked, his gaze darting between us. Alice stood, her voice steady as she held out the letter. "Care to explain this?" Sam's face paled as he read the note. He looked up, his expression a mix of shock and... was that guilt? "Alice, I can explain," he began, but Alice cut him off. "Save it. I want the truth, Sam." "All of it. Who's Rachel? And what kids in Oakville?" As Sam fumbled for words, I watched my daughter's world crumbling around her, and in that moment, I knew our lives would never be the same. Sam's face contorted into a mixture of shock and indignation as he read the letter. "Alice, honey, this is ridiculous. It's gotta be some kind of sick joke." I watched my daughter's eyes narrow, her jaw clenching. "A joke? Then explain why you took a personal day in Oakville when you were supposed to be on a business trip." Sam's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. I needed some time to think. Work's been stressful lately." "In Oakville?" Alice pressed, her voice rising. "With Rachel and the kids?" I placed a steadying hand on Alice's arm, feeling the tension thrumming through her body. Sam's gaze darted between us, a cornered animal searching for escape. "There's no Rachel," he insisted, running a hand through his hair. "No kids. Alice, you know me. Would I ever do something like that to you?" The room fell silent, the weight of his question hanging in the air. I found myself searching Sam's face, the man I'd welcomed into our family, trying to reconcile the charming son-in-law with this nervous, evasive stranger before us. Alice's voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke. "I thought I knew you, Sam. Now I'm not so sure." Sam stepped forward, reaching for her hand. But Alice recoiled. "Baby, please, this is crazy. Someone's trying to mess with us, that's all." I couldn't stay silent any longer. "If that's true, Sam, then you won't mind proving it. Let Alice see your phone, your email, your credit card statements." His eyes widened. a flicker of panic crossing his features before he masked it with indignation. "Lola, with all due respect, this is between me and my wife." "Don't you dare," Alice snapped. "My mother has every right to be here. At least, I know I can trust her." The words hung in the air like a slap. Sam's shoulders sagged, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Fine," he said, fishing his phone from his pocket. "Here, look through it. You'll see there's nothing to find." Alice took the device, her fingers flying over the screen. I watched her face, seeing the hope and doubt warring in her eyes. After a few minutes, she looked up, her expression unreadable. "There are no texts or calls to or from anyone named Rachel," she admitted. "But there are a lot of calls to a number with no name. And your email password has been changed recently." Sam threw his hands up. "The unnamed number is a client, Alice, and I change my passwords regularly for security. You know that." I stepped in, my voice gentle but firm. "Alice, honey, I think you need some time to process all this. Why don't you come stay with me for a few days?" "She doesn't need to leave her own home," Sam protested, but Alice was already nodding. "I think that's a good idea, Mom," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I'll pack a bag." As Alice disappeared upstairs, I turned to Sam. "I hope, for everyone's sake, that you're telling the truth. But let me be clear. If you've hurt my daughter, there will be consequences." Sam's face hardened. "I've done nothing wrong, Lola, and I don't appreciate these accusations." Before I could respond, Alice returned, overnight bag in hand. The sight of her, so lost and vulnerable, broke my heart. "I'll call you," she told Sam, not meeting his eyes. I need some space to think." As we walked out the door, I heard Sam call after us, "Alice, please, don't do this." But Alice kept walking, her head high despite the tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. As I helped her into the car, I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over, and I'd be damned if I let anyone, even Sam, hurt my little girl. The days following Alice's confrontation with Sam were a whirlwind of emotions. I watched my daughter oscillate between hope and despair, clinging to the possibility that it was all a misunderstanding while simultaneously preparing for the worst. "He's been calling non-stop," Alice sighed, staring at her buzzing phone. We were sitting in my sunroom, the cheerful yellow walls a stark contrast to the gloom hanging over us. "Have you answered?" I asked, pouring her another cup of chamomile tea. She shook her head. "I can't. Not yet, but—" She hesitated, biting her lip. "I've noticed things, Mom, things I can't ignore anymore." My heart sank. "What kind of things, sweetheart?" "He's been working late more often. His stories about his trips don't add up. And last week I found a receipt for a jewelry store in his jacket pocket. Our anniversary isn't for months." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Oh, Alice?" "I need to know the truth," she said, her voice steadying with resolve. "I'm thinking of hiring a private investigator." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind flashed back to Alice's wedding day, her radiant smile as she walked down the aisle of our small-town church. Sam had looked at her like she hung the moon. Where had it all gone wrong? "Are you sure that's necessary?" I asked, even as I knew the answer. Alice nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I have to know, Mom, one way or another." As much as it pained me, I knew she was right. "Okay, honey, if that's what you need to do, I'll support you." The next week was a blur of clandestine meetings and hushed phone calls. Alice found a reputable detective agency, and I helped her gather the information they needed. All the while, Sam's calls and messages continued, growing increasingly desperate. "Alice, please?" His voice crackled through the speakerphone one evening. "Just talk to me. We can work this out." I watched my daughter's face harden, her jaw set in determination. "I'll talk to you when I'm ready, Sam. Not before." As she hung up, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. My little girl had grown into a strong, resilient woman, but that strength was tested when, 10 days after hiring the detective, Alice received a thick manila envelope in the mail. "It's from the agency," she whispered, her hands shaking as she held it. I sat beside her on the couch, my arm around her shoulders. "You don't have to open it right now if you're not ready." Alice took a deep breath. "No, I need to know." With trembling fingers, she broke the seal and pulled out a stack of photographs. As we flipped through them, my heart shattered for my daughter. There was Sam armed with a pretty redhead. Sam playing in a park with 2 young children. Sam kissing the woman on the front porch of a quaint suburban home. "Oh, God," Alice choked out, the photos slipping from her grasp and scattering across the floor. I pulled her close, feeling her body rack with sobs. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." As I held her, my mind raced. How could Sam have done this? How could he have built an entire secret life while married to my daughter? Alice's sobs gradually subsided, replaced by an eerie calm. She pulled away, wiping her eyes, and I saw a steely glint in them that I'd never seen before. "Mom," she said, her voice steady despite the tear tracks on her cheeks. "I need your help. We're going to make Sam pay for what he's done." In that moment, looking at my daughter's determined face, I realized that our ordeal was far from over. It was just beginning. And God help Sam when Alice was through with him. "Whatever you need, honey," I promised, my own resolve hardening. "I'm right here with you." Little did I know just how far we'd go in pursuit of justice and revenge. The morning after we received the detective's photos, I awoke to find Alice's bed empty. Panic gripped me until I heard muffled sounds from the study. I found her hunched over my old desktop computer, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Alice, honey, have you been up all night?" I asked, my voice thick with concern. She looked up, her face a mask of determination and barely contained rage. "I couldn't sleep, Mom. Not after what we saw, so I did some digging of my own." I pulled up a chair beside her, dreading what she might have uncovered. "What did you find?" Alice took a deep breath. "It's worse than we thought. Sam doesn't just have another family. He has another life." She turned the screen towards me, revealing a social media profile for a Samuel Thompson in Oakville. The profile picture showed Sam, our Sam, grinning with his arm around the redhead from the photos. 2 smiling children completed the picture-perfect family portrait. "He's been living a double life for years, Mom," Alice said, her voice cracking. "He has a whole other identity, a successful real estate business in Oakville. Those kids, they're 6 and 4. He's been lying to me our entire marriage." My heart shattered for my daughter all over again. I reached out to comfort her, but she shrugged off my touch, standing abruptly. "I need answers," she declared. "I'm going to Oakville." Alarm bells rang in my head. "Alice, wait. Think this through. What good will confronting them do?" She whirled on me, eyes flashing. "What good? Mom, I need to know the truth. I need to see it with my own eyes. And that woman, Rachel, she deserves to know too." I stood, grasping her shoulders gently. "I understand, sweetheart, but barging in there could be dangerous. We don't know how Sam will react if he's cornered." Alice deflated slightly, sinking back into her chair. "You're right, but I can't just sit here and do nothing." An idea struck me. "What if we bring the mountain to Mohammed?" Alice looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "Sam doesn't know we've uncovered his secret," I explained. "What if we set a trap, invite him home, make him think you're ready to reconcile, then confront him with what we know?" A slow, almost predatory smile spread across Alice's face. "And record everything. Get him to confess on camera." I nodded, a mix of pride and apprehension swirling in my chest. "Exactly. We'll have irrefutable proof, and he won't be able to wiggle his way out of it." Alice's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Sam's number. "I'm calling him now. He'll be so relieved. He won't suspect a thing." As she dialed, I couldn't help but marvel at my daughter's strength. The sweet little girl who once cried over scraped knees was now a force to be reckoned with. "Sam?" Alice's voice was honey-sweet, betraying none of the turmoil beneath. "Hi, it's me. I think I'm ready to talk. Can you come over tonight?" I watched as she masterfully wove a tale of loneliness and regret, luring Sam into our web. When she hung up, her eyes met mine, blazing with determination. "He'll be here at 7, she announced. "We have work to do." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. We set up hidden cameras, prepared a script of questions, and steeled ourselves for the confrontation to come. As the clock ticked closer to 7, I saw Alice's resolve waver for just a moment. "Mom," she whispered, "what if I'm not strong enough to face him?" I cupped her face in my hands, my heart swelling with love and pride. "You are the strongest person I know, Alice. You can do this, and I'll be right here with you every step of the way." The doorbell rang, shattering the moment. Alice straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and nodded. "Let's end this," she said, moving towards the door. As I watched her go, I knew that whatever happened next would change our lives forever. The time for truth had finally come. The tension in the room was palpable as Sam stepped through the doorway. Alice's face was a mask of calm, but I could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. I retreated to the kitchen, close enough to intervene if needed, but giving them space for this confrontation. "Alice, honey, I'm so glad you called." Sam's voice drifted in, sickeningly sweet. "I've missed you so much." "Have you, Sam?" Alice's tone was cool, controlled. "Or have you been too busy with your other family to notice I was gone?" The silence that followed was deafening. I peered around the corner, seeing Sam's face drain of color. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. Alice's laugh was bitter. "Don't insult me, Sam. I know everything. Rachel, the kids in Oakville, your entire double life." Sam's shoulders sagged, the facade crumbling. "Alice, I can explain." "Explain?" Alice's voice rose. "Explain how you've been lying to me our entire marriage? How you have 2 children I knew nothing about?" I watched as Sam reached for her, but Alice recoiled. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "It was a mistake," Sam pleaded. "I never meant for it to go this far. I love you, Alice. You're my wife." "And what's Rachel?" Alice demanded. "What are those children?" Sam's face crumpled. A moment of weakness that spiraled out of control, but I want to make it right. I'll end it with Rachel, I swear. We can start over, just you and me. I felt my blood boil at his audacity. How dare he think he could manipulate his way out of this? Alice's next words chilled me to the bone. "You're right, Sam. We are going to start over, but not in the way you think." She pulled out her phone, playing a video of Sam with his other family. His face paled further. "How did you?" "I hired a private investigator," Alice cut him off. "I have everything documented. Your trips, your fake business, the money you've been funneling to support them." Sam's demeanor changed instantly, desperation replaced by anger. "You had no right to spy on me. And you had no right to betray me," Alice shouted back, "to lie to me every single day for years." I stepped into the room then, unable to stay back any longer. "I think you should leave, Sam." He whirled on me. "This is none of your business, Lola." "My daughter is my business," I retorted, standing my ground. Alice placed a hand on my arm, her voice steady. "It's okay, Mom. Sam was just leaving anyway." Sam's eyes darted between us, realizing he was cornered. "Alice, please, we can work this out. I'll do anything. Anything." Alice's voice was dangerously soft. "Then pack your bags and get out of my house. I want you gone by morning." "You can't be serious," Sam sputtered. "Where am I supposed to go?" Alice's smile was cold. "I hear Oakville's nice this time of year." With that, she turned her back on him, effectively dismissing him. Sam stood there, mouth agape, before storming out, slamming the door behind him. As soon as he was gone, Alice collapsed into my arms, her body shaking with sobs. I held her tight, my heart breaking for her pain. "You did it, sweetheart," I murmured. "You stood your ground. I'm so proud of you." Alice pulled back, wiping her eyes. "It's not over, Mom. This is just the beginning." I saw a fierce determination in her gaze that both thrilled and frightened me. "What do you mean?" "Sam thinks he can walk away from this, start over with his other family," Alice said, her voice hardening. "But I won't let him. He needs to face the consequences of his actions." "Alice," I cautioned, "revenge won't heal your pain." She shook her head. "This isn't about revenge, Mom. It's about justice. For me, for those children, even for Rachel. Sam doesn't get to play God with people's lives and walk away unscathed." As I looked at my daughter, I realized she had changed irrevocably. The trusting, loving woman I knew had been replaced by someone harder, more cynical. And as much as it pained me, I knew I had to support her through whatever came next. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, steeling myself for the battle ahead. Alice's smile was grim. "We're going to Oakville, Mom. It's time Rachel learned the truth, too." The weeks following Alice's confrontation with Sam were a whirlwind of activity. My daughter, once so trusting and open, had transformed into a woman on a mission. I watched with a mixture of pride and concern as she meticulously planned her next move. "Mom, I need your help," Alice said one morning, spreading papers across my kitchen table. "We're going to host a family gathering." I raised an eyebrow. "A gathering? Alice, are you sure that's wise?" She nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "It's the perfect cover. We'll invite both families, ours and Rachel's. Sam won't be able to refuse without raising suspicions." As much as it pained me, I had to admire her cunning. "And then what? Then we expose him," Alice said simply, "in front of everyone." The next few days were a flurry of phone calls and preparations. Alice crafted a story about wanting to mend fences with Sam, insisting on a big family dinner to celebrate their reconciliation. I marveled at her ability to keep her voice steady as she spoke to him, not betraying an ounce of her true intentions. The day of the gathering arrived, and I felt sick with anticipation. Alice, however, was the picture of calm as she greeted guests, playing the perfect hostess. "You're doing great, sweetheart," I whispered as I passed her in the hallway. She gave me a tight smile. "I have to, Mom. I can't let him win." As the house filled with chatter and laughter, I kept a watchful eye on Sam. He seemed nervous, constantly checking his phone and glancing at the door. When the doorbell rang again, he visibly tensed. Alice answered it, and I heard her cheerful voice. "Rachel, I'm so glad you could make it. And these must be the kids. Come in, come in." The room fell silent as Rachel entered, confusion etched on her face. Sam's other wife was pretty, with kind eyes that now darted around the room uncertainly. 2 children clung to her legs, sensing the sudden tension. Sam stood frozen, his face ashen. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" Before Rachel could respond, Alice stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "I invited her, Sam. I thought it was time our families met, don't you?" The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as understanding dawned on Rachel's face, quickly followed by horror and anger. "Sam," she choked out, "what's going on?" Alice's voice was steel. "Why don't you tell her, Sam? Tell everyone how you've been living a double life, how you have 2 wives, 2 families in 2 different states." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Sam's parents looked shell-shocked, while his sister burst into tears. Rachel stumbled backward, clutching her children close. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice breaking. Sam's eyes darted wildly around the room, like a cornered animal. I can explain," he stammered. But Alice wasn't done. She produced a folder, spreading documents across the coffee table. "Bank statements, travel records, birth certificates," she announced. "Everything that proves Sam's deception." I watched as Sam's world crumbled around him. His parents turned away in disgust, while Rachel's sobs filled the air. The children, confused and frightened, began to cry. In that moment, I saw Alice falter for the first time. The weight of what she had done, the lives she had upended, seemed to hit her all at once. She swayed slightly, and I rushed to her side. "Alice," I whispered, "maybe we should." But she straightened, shaking off my concern. Her eyes met Sam's, and I saw a flash of the hurt, betrayed woman beneath her hard exterior. "It's over, Sam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've lost everything." As chaos erupted around us, Rachel's angry shouts, Sam's desperate pleas, the confused cries of family members, I held my daughter close. She had won, but at what cost? The reckoning had come, and none of us would ever be the same. The aftermath of Alice's revelation was chaos incarnate. Shock waves rippled through the room as Sam's duplicitous life lay bare for all to see. I watched, heart-pounding, as the scene unfolded like a car crash in slow motion. Rachel, Sam's other wife, stumbled backward, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. How could you?" she choked out, tears streaming down her face. Sam, pale and sweating, looked frantically between Alice and Rachel. "I can explain," he stammered, but his words fell flat in the charged atmosphere. Alice stood firm, her voice steady despite the trembling I could see in her hands. "There's nothing to explain, Sam. The evidence speaks for itself." As if on cue, Sam's parents stepped forward, his mother's face contorted with anger and shame. "Samuel James Henderson," she hissed, "how dare you bring this disgrace upon our family?" The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, accusations, questions, and cries of disbelief. I moved to Alice's side, ready to support her if needed, but she remained resolute. "Everyone, please," Alice called out, her voice cutting through the noise. "I know this is a shock, but there's more you need to know." She produced a stack of financial documents, spreading them on the coffee table. "Sam hasn't just been lying about his personal life. He's been embezzling from both his companies to fund this double life." Fresh gasps of horror filled the room. Sam's father, a respected businessman himself, looked as if he'd been struck. "Is this true, son?" he demanded. Sam's silence was damning. Rachel, who had been quietly sobbing, suddenly straightened. "The business trips," she said, her voice hollow. "They were never real, were they? You were just shuttling between us." Alice nodded grimly. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. I only found out recently myself. As the two women shared a look of understanding, I felt a surge of pride for my daughter's compassion in the face of her own pain. The moment was shattered by Sam's desperate lunge towards the door. "You can't do this to me," he shouted, his composure finally cracking. "I'll lose everything." Alice's brother-in-law, a burly man named Mike, blocked his path. "You've done this to yourself, Sam," he growled. Trapped, Sam whirled back to face the room. His eyes, wild with panic, landed on his children clinging to Rachel's legs. "Please," he begged, "think of the kids. We can work this out, can't we?" It was Rachel who answered, her voice steely with newfound resolve. "No, Sam. We can't. It's over." As if those words were a signal, Sam crumpled to the floor, sobbing. The sight of this once charming man reduced to a blubbering mess was almost pitiful. Alice stepped forward, her face a mix of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. "I've already contacted both companies' legal departments," she announced. "They'll be launching full investigations. And Rachel," she turned to the other woman, "I have a lawyer friend who can help you with whatever comes next." Rachel nodded gratefully, pulling her children close. As the initial shock began to wear off, people started to move. Sam's parents huddled in a corner, whispering furiously. Rachel was comforted by some of Alice's friends. And Sam sat alone, abandoned by everyone. I approached Alice, who stood watching it all with an unreadable expression. "You did it, sweetheart," I said softly. "It's over." She turned to me, and I was startled to see tears in her eyes. "Is it, Mom?" she whispered. "Why doesn't it feel like a victory?" Before I could respond, Rachel approached us, her children in tow. "Alice," she said hesitantly, I don't know what to say. Thank you seems inadequate, but—" Alice managed a small smile. "That you don't have to say anything. We're both victims here." As the two women embraced, I realized that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The real challenge, healing and moving forward, was just starting. And as I watched my daughter comfort the woman who had unknowingly shared her husband, I knew that whatever came next, Alice would face it with the same strength and grace she'd shown today. The storm had broken, but the aftermath was yet to come. The weeks following Sam's exposure were a whirlwind of legal battles, emotional upheavals, and unexpected alliances. I watched my daughter navigate this storm with a grace and strength that both awed and worried me. One crisp autumn morning, Alice called me over to her house. As I entered, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with Rachel, heads bent over a stack of papers. "Mom," Alice said, looking up with tired eyes, "we need your advice." I sat down, noting the legal documents spread before them. "What's going on, girls?" Rachel spoke first, her voice trembling slightly. "The divorce proceedings are almost finalized, for both of us. But Sam's trying to claim he has no assets," Alice finished, her jaw clenching. "He's trying to leave us both with nothing." My blood boiled at Sam's audacity. That lying, cheating. "We know, Mom," Alice cut me off gently. "But we have a plan. We just need your help to pull it off." As they outlined their strategy, I felt a mix of pride and apprehension. My daughter and the woman who had unknowingly shared her husband had formed an unlikely alliance, determined to see justice done. The next day found us in a sleek downtown office, facing Sam and his lawyer across a polished conference table. Sam looked haggard, his once charming smile replaced by a permanent scowl. "Let's make this quick," his lawyer began. "My client has already stated he has no assets to divide." Alice leaned forward, her voice steady. "That's interesting, Sam, because Rachel and I have been doing some digging." Sam's face paled as Alice produced a thick folder. "We found your offshore accounts," she continued, "the ones where you've been funneling money from both your businesses." Rachel chimed in, her quiet voice carrying a newfound strength. "We also uncovered the property you bought in the Cayman Islands, the one you thought no one knew about." Sam's lawyer sputtered, but Alice wasn't finished. "We're prepared to turn all of this over to the authorities unless you agree to a fair settlement for both of us." The room fell silent as Sam's world crumbled around him once again. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but Sam seemed beyond hearing. "How?" he finally croaked. "How did you find out?" Alice's smile was cold. "You underestimated us, Sam. Both of us. That was your biggest mistake." What followed was a flurry of negotiations, with Sam and his lawyer fighting a losing battle. By the end of the day, both Alice and Rachel had secured fair settlements, ensuring financial stability for themselves and Rachel's children. As we left the office, I saw Alice sag slightly, the weight of the past months finally showing. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "It's over, sweetheart. You did it." She looked at me, tears shimmering in her eyes. "We did it, Mom. I couldn't have gotten through this without you." Rachel approached us, her face a mix of exhaustion and relief. "Alice, I don't know how to thank you." Alice surprised me by pulling Rachel into a hug. We helped each other. That's what matters. As I watched these two women, both betrayed by the same man, find strength in each other, I felt a surge of hope for the future. Months later, we gathered for a small celebration at Alice's house. Rachel and her children were there, along with close friends who had supported us through the ordeal. As I looked around the room, I saw smiles where there had once been tears, laughter where there had been pain. Alice clinked her glass, calling for attention. "I want to make a toast," she said, her voice strong and clear, "to new beginnings, to unlikely friendships, and to the strength we find in ourselves when we're tested." As glasses were raised and cheers echoed, I felt a profound sense of pride. My daughter had faced her darkest hour and emerged not just victorious, but compassionate. She had turned a tale of betrayal into one of resilience and hope. Looking at Alice now, surrounded by love and support, I knew that whatever challenges life might bring, she would face them with the same courage and grace she'd shown throughout this ordeal. And I would be right there beside her, every step of the way. The storm had passed, and in its wake, we had all been transformed. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Alice caught my eye across the room. Her smile, bright and genuine, told me everything I needed to know. We had weathered the storm, and we were stronger for it. The night of our 20th wedding anniversary should have been a celebration, but it unveiled a truth that shattered my world. I had planned a romantic evening, Darren's favorite meal, followed by the gift I'd been secretly saving for. But when I reached into his jacket pocket to retrieve the theater tickets, my fingers brushed against an odd rectangular shape. Pulling it out, my heart stopped as I stared at the receipt for a diamond necklace from Cedars Jewelers. Darren walked in just as I was unfolding the damning piece of paper. "What's that?" he asked casually. I could barely let the words tumble out. "When were you going to give me this?" He glanced over and paled. "Oh, that! It's not for you." The room started spinning as the implication struck me. I stumbled over to the couch, my hands shaking. You bought another woman jewelry?" Darren sighed and grabbed himself a beer from the fridge like it was just another day. "Listen, Marissa, I haven't been happy for a long time. I've met someone else, someone who appreciates and desires me." My ears started ringing as he droned on about this mystery woman. I could barely process the venomous words pouring out of his mouth. "Her name is Lena, and we're in love. I want a divorce so we can stop living a lie." I stared at him, unseeing. "After 20 years? Just like that?" He shrugged nonchalantly. "I'm sorry, but it's over. God, we'll have to split assets and figure out what's best for Ethan, of course. I'm seeing a lawyer first thing tomorrow." "So that's it?" I screamed, the betrayal and humiliation burning through me. The vase of fresh roses I'd bought for our anniversary went crashing against the wall, stemming briefly, splattering petals over the hardwood. "You just throw away 20 years without even trying to fix things?" Darren didn't even flinch. Darren, a detached look on his face as he studied his beer bottle. "There's nothing to fix, Marissa. We're just delaying the inevitable by staying in this loveless marriage." I wanted to claw his eyes out, rage and disbelief coursing through me. Who was this stranger casually destroying everything we had built? Then a new fear gripped me, cold and hard in the pit of my stomach. "What about Ethan?" I whispered, trying to regain some composure. "You can't take him from me." "Don't worry, we'll negotiate that too. To be honest, he'll probably want to live with me and Lena once he gets used to the idea." White-hot anger flashed through me again at the thought of some homewrecker trying to replace me as Ethan's mother. Screw being civil. This was war. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Darren thought he could just waltz out and discard me when it suited him. But I wouldn't go down without a vicious fight. I would use every ounce of strength to protect my son and make Darren pay for throwing away our sacred vows. He was about to learn you don't terrorize a wife and mother without suffering the consequences. The night dragged on in a blur of tears and anger after Darren's bombshell confession. I barely slept, my mind spinning over his callous dismissal of our marriage vows. How could the man I loved discard me so easily for some young tart from the office? In the cold light of morning, I got my first look at the woman he'd risked everything for, Lena. Just 28 years old, with a vapid social media presence full of pouty selfies, she looked barely older than the college girls I counseled, with fake breasts and hair extensions. I felt ill thinking about Darren's wandering hands on her plastic body. Over bland cereal that scratched my raw throat, I asked Ethan if he'd suspected anything. My son just shook his head, eyes vacant from the trauma of seeing his parents' marriage implode. I longed to protect him, but Darren had other ideas. "We need to talk about living situations," he said in an infuriatingly calm voice when I refused to answer his calls. "I think it's best if Ethan stays with me during the separation." Like hell, I spat, unable to mask my fury at his audacity. "You really think parading your office mattress in front of our son is appropriate?" "Don't start with the insults, Marissa. This is hard enough." My blood boiled at his feigned concern. "You threw our family away the moment you stuck your dick in that bimbo." "Mom," Ethan gasped, clearly uncomfortable witnessing our toxic exchange. "That's enough," Darren said sternly. "This hostility isn't good for Ethan. We'll discuss custody arrangements through our lawyers." "You mean your lawyers," I shot back. "Which shark did you hire to take my son away from me?" He sighed in exasperation. "Always the drama queen." Those 4 words detonated my anger into blinding fury. "Drama queen? I spent 20 years caring for our home and child while you chased money and strange." I hurled the closest object at hand, a ceramic chicken objet d'art that Darren's mother had gifted us. It shattered against the wall next to his head. "Mom, stop!" Ethan cried out. But I was seeing red, unleashing 2 decades of resentment. "You never appreciated any of my sacrifices. Well, if you think I'm going down without scorched earth retribution, you're dumber than you look." Darren flinched as shrapnel pelted his designer shirt, finally seeing the menace in my eyes. Without a word, he strode out, letting the front door slam behind him. I collapsed onto the sofa, with his chest heaving, as Ethan stared at me warily. I was consumed by a new protective rage. Darren wanted to cast me and my son aside like rubbish? Well, he was in for a brutal awakening. I may have lost my husband and the life I'd known, but I would claw my way through hell to ensure Darren's ultimate demise, both professionally and personally. He wanted to see drama? I would become his worst nightmare, stopping at nothing to destroy him. Ethan didn't deserve to see this war. But I had no other choice now. The man I'd loved had become a soulless enemy, and by God, he would reap the agonizing consequences. I needed a plan. Some way to fight back against Darren's legal barracudas and regain control over my life. But I couldn't take him on alone. He held all the financial power after 2 decades of me deferring to his breadwinner status. That's when Grant, my older brother, stepped in as my first line of defense. "You can't let that bastard bully you out of everything," he growled after I spilled the whole sordid tale over a bottle of Cabernet at his place. We were kindred hot-headed spirits, a fact our parents lamented over frequently while we were young hotheads. "Easy for you to say," I sniffed, wiping away angry tears. "You're not the one being discarded like trash after sacrificing my best years." Grant slammed his fist on the table, those flashing eyes of emerald fury I knew so well. "That soon-to-be broke-dick loser husband of yours is out of his damn mind if he thinks he can treat you this way. We'll bury the son of a bitch in legal fees and public shame if we have to." I felt a surge of gratitude for having at least one person utterly on my side through this nightmare. I want to take him for everything he's worth. Every broke-dick penny. "That's my girl." Grant cracked a rare grin, that mischievous sparkle back in his eyes like when we used to egg houses as teens. "You let your big brother take the wheel on this one, sis. Old Darren doesn't know what he's in for." I returned a shaky smile back, feeling a flicker of hope despite the chaos. There would be hell to pay. I would make certain of that. No one abandons me without reaping the whirlwind. The next day, I got my second formidable ally when Sylvia, my best friend since freshman year of college, arrived on my doorstep. "I can't believe that scumbag is trying to put you out on the street," she fumed, pulling me into a rib-cracking bear hug. Despite her ferocity, just having Sylvia's presence calmed me. She'd been my rock during every major life event the past 20 years. And now, true to form, she had my back during this worst betrayal of all. "He won't get away with it," I assured her, feeling a surge of new resolve. "Grant and I have started making preparations." Sylvia's eyes narrowed to slits. "You're going to take that cheating sack down, aren't you?" I nodded, surprised at how little guilt I felt. The man I loved was gone, replaced by a selfish stranger. Mother was untamed. It was time to fight for my surrender. "Well, you're going to need compromat. All the ammo you can get on that scumbag," Sylvia said. "All business now. Financials, dirtbag stuff, anything we can use." She rubbed her hands together with relish. "I'm just the legal pit bull you need." She shot me a savage grin. "Darren wants to tango? Well, this bitch has a mean tango." Despite the coming war, I couldn't stop the startled laugh that burst from my lips. With Sylvia and Grant at my side, I suddenly had formidable reinforcements. Let the games begin. Over the next few weeks, we formed a united front, my own personal team of overlords. Sylvia brought her expertise as a top family attorney, while Grant worked his accounting contacts for intel on Darren's money trail. Slowly, I felt the shreds of my confidence and thirst for vengeance re-emerging. Darren could play the victim all he wanted, blaming me for our Marshall breakdown. But he was about to learn, in horrific detail, the catastrophic consequences of underestimating a betrayed woman. I would orchestrate his downfall through his own hubris and greed, those twin curses that caused his undoing. By the time I was through, Darren would not only be a broken man, but Ethan would finally see his father for the desiccated soul he truly was. At last, my son and I would gain the freedom to flourish without his black market toxicity. With Sylvia's dogged legal assistance, I started gathering ammunition for the war ahead. Bank statements, emails, text messages, anything that could expose Darren's rotten core and shady business dealings. It turned out Mr. Entrepreneurial Real Estate Man had been cutting quite a few unscrupulous corners over the years. Fraudulent property valuations, kickbacks from mortgage brokers, even under-the-table payoffs to building inspectors. Sylvia cackled with delight as she pored over the evidence. "This worm is going down harder than a drunk prom date," she assured me one evening over takeout curry. "No judge will let him keep the kids once they see what a scumbag deadbeat he is." I felt a grim satisfaction watching the box of incriminating files grow. Darren's affair had turned my whole existence upside down. Well, now I would return the favor by systematically dismantling his precious empire, beginning with his ruined professional reputation. But that night, the true scope of Darren's deceit took an even more sickening turn when Grant called in a panic. "Oh my God, Riss, you're not going to believe the filth I just uncovered about that little bimbo, Lena." My heart pounded as he recounted her long, calculated history of targeting wealthy married men across multiple states. Social media profiles revealed a sinister pattern of love-bombing men, getting them to leave their wives and families, then milking them for cash and gifts until she got bored and discarded them. Her trail of ruined homes and empty bank accounts spanned over a decade. "She's a professional homewrecker," I muttered numbly after hearing it all. The full depths of her predation on my family sank in, stoking the flames of hatred even higher. The scheming little monster. "Precisely," Grant growled, so full of disgust I could picture his face flushing crimson. "And that's not even the worst of it. Old pal from high school who works Vice sent over some police reports." As he laid out the grisly new details, my blood turned to ice in my veins. Arrests for solicitation, allegations of theft, stalking, and drug charges. Lena was far more nefarious than some harmless gold-digging floozy. "Oh my God," I gasped once he finished, my head spinning. "How could Darren be taken in by her?" "That's what she does, Riss," Grant said grimly. "She preys on weak, desperate losers going through a midlife crisis. That snake had her sights set on the next big score." I was shaking with revulsion, picturing Lena sinking her claws into my unwitting husband. For all my anger at Darren, he didn't deserve to be manipulated and discarded by a sociopathic criminal. I felt bile rise in my throat. Nobody plays with my family without suffering the ultimate consequences. "We need to end this now," I said, a cold finality in my voice that surprised even me. Darren has severely underestimated who he's dealing with. There was a low chuckle on the other end. Never did like having to learn a lesson twice, did he? I allowed the faintest hint of a grim smile, despite my fury. No, he never was very bright when it came to reality checks. Well then, Grant concluded darkly, I'd say it's high time we issue the corrective before he ruins the rest of all our lives. For the rest of that night, exhaustion eluded me as my mind whirled with the new intelligence about Lena's true evil nature. Clearly, she represented a threat far more dangerous than just a passing midlife fling. She was a calculated, immoral predator, diligently working her way through every wealthy idiot foolish enough to stray. Well, I would happily become her undoing. No one destroys my family's lives without paying a butcher's ransom in return. The time had come to use every tool in my arsenal to cut out the fetid, infected limbs dragging us down. I would stop at nothing until Darren and his degenerate whore had their worlds cremated to ashes at their feet. Only then, after being forged in the flames of their arousal selfishness, would both of them finally understand the devastation they had wrought. Vengeance may be unsavory, but sometimes it's the only deterrent for such unconscionable acts. Over the next few weeks, Darren seemed to relish flaunting his new life of sin with Lena in my face. Brazen selfies and check-ins at fancy restaurants taunted me on social media. My stomach turned watching the sordid displays of Darren draping his arms around the woman who had detonated my world. But I maintained an eerie calm, secure in the knowledge that their ego-fueled bliss was willfully oblivious to the coming storm. Look at them, Darren sneered one afternoon, the first time Lena joined one of our interim custody meetings. He shoved his phone across the table, a photo of the smirking bimbo posing in lingerie splayed across the screen. Isn't she incredible? I refused to look, keeping my eyes locked on his with a withering stare. Yes, she certainly seems accomplished at her profession. Lena's heavily made-up face twisted in confusion as she opened her obliviously overlined lips. My what? Let's stay focused, Sylvia interrupted with a bemused look. She was taking undisguised glee in refereeing the humiliation that lay ahead for the gruesome twosome. Back at the house, Ethan remained sullen and withdrawn, keeping to his room and barely looking at Darren during their court-mandated visits. Infuriatingly, the affair degenerate seemed more concerned with showing off his new plaything than reconnecting with his only child. You've barely spoken to your son in weeks, I said coolly after enduring yet another long dinner disrupted by Lena's shrill, inane chatter. Darren waved a dismissive hand, eyes glassy from too much wine. He's dealing with the divorce in his own way. You know teenagers? I know betrayed kids too, I said evenly, locking eyes with the hollow shells where his soul used to reside. At least with you out of the picture, mine can finally heal from the trauma of having such a wretched, absent father. Rage flickered across Darren's face then as he realized the depths of my disgust. You smug bitch. What gives you the right to shut me out? My lips curled into a sneer of pure contempt. Still playing the victim card? That ship has sailed, asshole. Time to face the consequences of your depraved choices. Is that a threat? Lena snarled, outraged that anyone dared defy her latest married meal ticket. A promise, I hissed back with undisguised loathing. You brazen hussies think you can just take whatever families and homes you want by opening your fish holes? Time to learn some manners. Mom, please, stop. Ethan's stricken voice cut through the venom, but I was too transfixed on administering consequences to the poisonous snakes infesting our lives. You're going to regret this disrespect, Darren said in a low, menacing tone that might have cowed me years ago. I'll take everything if you force me to. I let out a bark of laughter, unable to contain my derision. For weeks, I'd allowed their circus of depravity to play out, getting them overconfident and complacent. But now their sneering, self-entitled arrogance would seal their doom. By all means, take your best shot, I said with a shrug. Nothing would make me happier than legally eviscerating you both before burning the remains. Darren's eyes widened slightly, as if finally glimpsing the full extent of what he had unleashed. I didn't bother to hide my vindictive smirk. Let him marinate in dread. It was but a faint taste of the hell to come. Sylvia slid a folder of paperwork across the table then, still grinning. We've prepared a preliminary asset division agreement for your consideration. As the sniveling fools pawed through the legalese, my gaze drifted to Ethan. His young face was etched with misery and resignation that no child should have to bear. It cemented my resolve. Ridding our lives of Darren and Lena's toxic effects was non-negotiable. They could dismiss me as some deranged, overly dramatic shrew for now, but soon their overconfident arrogance would be shattered. Underestimating me, a mother pushed to the brink, would be the first in a catastrophic series of errors, and I would luxuriate in every anguished second of their undoing. With each passing week, Darren and Lena's arrogance reached offensive new heights. Public displays of affection and taunting posts filled their social media accounts, rubbing my face in their debauched bliss. "Look at this," Lena crowed one afternoon, sidling up to shove her phone in my face. It showed Darren beaming as the gold-digging whore modeled a brand-new diamond tennis bracelet he'd gifted her. "Your sleazeball ex-husband has such incredible taste, doesn't he?" I fixed her with a look of pure revulsion. Yes, he always did have discriminating taste in overpriced trash. Lena's heavy makeup couldn't mask the flash of rage across her vapid features. "You're just a bitter, jealous old hag hanging on to the past." A cruel smile slowly spread across my lips. "And you're a two-bit prostitute hanging on to whatever married scumbag will leak his billfold. Isn't that right, dear?" With a shriek of incoherent fury, Lena raised her bejeweled hand to strike me. But Darren quickly grabbed her wrist, an admonishing look on his smug face. Now, ladies, let's not let our claws out in front of the boy." He shot a pointed glance toward Ethan, who was frozen in shock and embarrassment at the unseemly scene. The poor kid was being forced to witness the dregs of depravity thanks to his father's insatiable lust. "See what a degenerate bitch you raised your son around all these years?" Lena hissed through painted lips, struggling against Darren's grip. "I'll show him what a real woman is like once the divorce is final." White-hot rage lanced through me at the thought of this scorpion mother trying to slither her way into my child's life. Ethan was paying enough for his dad's mistakes without adding Lena's poison into the equation. "Over my dead body," I snarled, rising to my feet with clenched fists. "I'll bury you in litigation for the rest of your wasted life before I let you blight my son." Darren's face hardened and he stepped between us. "You're the one who made this divorce inevitable through your constant contempt and disrespect. Don't act so above it all. Your neurotic bitterness is what's destroying this family." "Enough." The shout came not from me, but from Ethan. We all turned in stunned silence as my son gestured wildly, anguish and rage etched across his young face. "I can't take this anymore. You two are the most selfish human beings on the planet. Do you have any idea what you're putting me through?" Darren made a move toward him. "Now, son, you just need to." "Shut up!" Ethan roared, angrier than I'd ever seen. He pointed a shaking finger at Lena, who gaped like an overstuffed fish. "And you're nothing more than a cheap hooker trying to buy a new family." He whirled back towards his father, wild-eyed. "And you, trading in your real family for this whore. I don't even recognize you anymore. I'm so disgusted, so ashamed of what you've become." Tears streaked down Ethan's face then, and any remaining anger melted into heartbreak. He fled from the room, unable to endure another moment of toxicity from the monsters who destroyed our family. For several long moments, an uneasy silence hung over the shattered remains of the ugly scene. I stared at Darren with a mixture of hatred and pity. This deluded fool truly had no idea the calamity he'd invited by chasing his reckless affair. Well, it was long past time I pried those scales from his willfully blind eyes. "You think this is disrespect?" I said in a low, dangerous tone. I leaned across the table, glaring straight through him. "You have no idea the world of torment I'm about to unleash on you both. Consider this a mere overture to the main event." Lena opened her mouth, possibly to shriek more indignant protests, but I silenced her with a single frigid look. "Starting tomorrow, the real games begin," I said with steel in my voice. "And by the time this is over, I'll have burned you straight through the core of your rotten, worthless souls." With that vow hanging in the air, I turned and walked out, back ramrod straight. The unraveling had officially begun. Darren and his mistress were about to reap the consequences of their despicable actions. No more Mrs. Nice Girl. From here on out, the only priority was mutually assured destruction. True to my promise, the shockwaves of my retaliation plan began rippling out the very next day. Thanks to Sylvia's tireless work, a deluge of legal motions and allegations hit Darren from every angle imaginable. First came the notices of civil lawsuits, painting him as a fraudulent real estate developer, enriching himself through graft and racketeering. A barrage of paperwork detailed inflated home valuations, kickbacks from loan officers, even bribes paid to municipal inspectors. His shady business practices, once camouflaged behind legitimate transactions, were now laid bare in painstaking detail. Next, the criminal charges started trickling in. Money laundering, tax evasion, even allegations of investment fund misappropriation. Within a matter of days, what few legitimate business dealings Darren had were frozen as authorities began seizing assets and combing through financials. The once swaggering businessman who had so casually devastated my life was now scrambling just to keep his head above water as the ocean waves crashed over him. Of course, the vulture Lena was first to cut and run once Darren's looming legal catastrophe came into focus. One sunny afternoon, she was standing on my doorstep, raccoon eyes leaking mascara, designer luggage in tow. "You did this," she wailed, blotchy face contorted with anguish. "You crazy bitch destroyed everything." I blinked at her with mocking innocence. "I'm sorry. I don't follow. My husband abandoned me, so I took reasonable recourse to protect my financial interests, completely within my legal rights." "My rights," Lena raged, stamping her foot. "I have rights, too. All of Darren's money and assets are mine now. We were starting a new life." A cruel smile twisted my lips then. "Ah, did the little gold digger's cash cow run dry? Too bad your talons couldn't sink in deep enough before we pried them out." With a scream of bilious fury, Lena hurled her oversized designer tote at me, spilling its contents across the doorstep in a jumbled mess. Then she spun on her studded heel and fled, weeping incoherently all the while. I watched her broken, despondent figure retreat down the driveway. Good riddance to that pank of tainted money and soul poison. Darren showed up later that evening, haggard and sweat-stained. He barged past me, red-faced and shaking, and started sweeping the discarded items on the porch into a box. "So is this what you wanted?" he panted, shooting me a hate-filled look. "I'm ruined, facing jail time. Is that enough justice for you?" I stared at him in cold silence, unmoved by his tantrum. For weeks, I had diligently gathered evidence of his corruption, providing a veritable roadmap for the feds to utterly dismantle his nefarious practices. And now he was reaping his deserved misery. "This is merely a down payment," I said in an arctic tone. "For every second of anguish you put me and Ethan through, I intend to excind from your flesh until you understand the meaning of the word suffering." Darren's expression flickered with a hint of worry then as my words drove home. For the first time, he seemed to truly comprehend the depthless determination behind my pursuit of vengeance. You won't get away with this," he sputtered. "I'll fight this in court. I'll take you for everything." I let out a short bark of laughter. "Oh, Darren, you sweet deluded fool, this is merely the opening salvo of consequences for your unspeakable betrayal and immorality. The body blows are still yet to come." I took a threatening step closer, eyes blazing with fury. "The utter ruination of your body, spirit, and financial empire is now an inevitability. And once you are gasping among the cinders of your miserable existence, you may yet learn an iota of the devastation your actions have caused." Darren recoiled from me then like a scalded dog, the box of Lena's hastily abandoned belongings clutched to his chest like a shield. For the briefest of moments, a flash of terror crossed his face before the mask of indignant defiance slipped back into place. "You're insane," he managed weakly. "A spiteful monster." A cruel smile twisted my lips as I reached to slam the door in his face. "No, my dear, simply a harbinger of your well-deserved descent into hell." The clang of the door closing echoed through the foyer as I walked away without a second glance. The shockwaves were still radiating outward, dismantling every facet of Darren's wretched existence, piece by agonizing piece. And I would be front and center, savoring every shriek of torment, until his debt was paid in full. Only then would my own soul finally find peace. The weeks and months that followed were a legal grind, but the outcome was never in doubt. Not after I'd thoroughly dismantled every pillar of Darren's formerly comfortable existence. Arraignments, depositions, bankruptcy filings, I stalked the courthouses with grim determination, ensuring each chink in his armor was pried wider until he was left defenseless. Sylvia barely had to enter their room before judges and arbiters began sharpening their gavels for the kill. Through it all, the costly legal bombardment drained Darren's remaining assets down to husks. I watched with unconcealed delight as his expensive suits turned to rags and his prized sports cars were seized by the bank. His palatial home, the scene of countless fake idyllic evenings, was lost to foreclosure. In the end, the man who had so brazenly discarded my unwavering devotion was left with nothing but the ashes of his ruined life. Lena, of course, was long gone, just another invisible statistic among the trail of discarded married men in her wake. Darren tried negotiating, begging for mercy, even brazenly attempting to guilt me by throwing Ethan in my face. But it was far too late for that. He had detonated our sacred family unit. The consequences of his betrayal were a riptide that would sweep away every rotten thing he'd ever cherished. On the day of his final sentencing, I felt zero pity watching the husk of the man I'd once loved shuffle into the courthouse, a ghastly specter of despair in ill-fitting second-hand clothes. Greed, ego, and lust had finally caught up to him in the form of a 7-year sentence for fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. "Well, here we are," he said hoarsely, head hung low in defeat. "The end of the road you promised." I said nothing, staring at him coolly as Sylvia loudly shuffled some papers beside me. "Aren't you going to gloat?" Darren's voice was barely above a croak. "Give me one final kick while I'm down?" I regarded him for a long moment before speaking. "Gloating would imply I took pleasure in reducing you to this," I said calmly. "The truth is, I feel nothing but revulsion at the depths of your depravity." A tremor passed across Darren's ruined face then. "How could you ever let it come to this? We had 20 years, a family." "We had nothing." My voice was ice cold. "You made the choice to sacrifice everything for selfish temporary desire and indulgence. You cast away 2 decades of my loyalty and commitment for what? A handful of mediocre orgasms and trinkets for that disposable whore?" I jabbed a finger towards him, rage resurging for one final crest. "You did this to yourself, Darren. My job was simply ensuring you understood the consequences of your depraved choices." Darren opened his mouth, perhaps to grovel or plead yet again. But a booming voice interrupted from the front of the courtroom. "Darren Michael Landis, you've been found guilty by this court of 32 counts of fraud and financial misdealing, as well as tax evasion. The people hereby sentence you to 84 months imprisonment in the state correctional system, with additional financial restitutions and penalties to follow. This court is adjourned." The gavel cracked down like a thunderclap, sealing the end of Darren's miserable chapter. As bailiffs moved in to escort the handcuffed wretch of a man away, he turned towards me with sunken, wretched eyes. "I hope, one day, you find peace." With that, he was removed through the towering oak doors, transported off to start his hard new life of imprisonment and misery. And although his words should have vindicated me, I felt nothing but hollowness inside. The man who vowed eternal love and family was forever buried. What was left was simply karma's receipt, the remorseless cost of his transgressions come due. I watched through the courtroom windows as the armored transport pulled away, Darren becoming just another inmate, number drowning in the atrophy of regret and shattered potential. It would be a long road of empty cells, indignity, and iron bars ahead. But that path was of his own making. My role had simply been the messenger of his consequences. I may have swung the final hammer, but he was the one who willfully triggered his own destruction from the start. And as I stepped out into the brisk air, ready to rejoin Ethan and return to rebuilding our new lives, I felt unburdened. There would be no more poison, manipulation, or moral bankruptcy dictated by Darren's black hole of selfishness. We were free now, and I would ensure we stayed that way for the rest of our days. It was the annual Memorial Day barbecue in our suburban neighborhood, and I should have been enjoying the warm sunshine and the mouth-watering aromas of sizzling burgers. Instead, a cold sense of dread washed over me as I overheard a hushed conversation between Nancy Wilson and Claire Robinson. "Did you hear about Neil Morrison's shady business dealings?" Nancy whispered conspiratorially. Rumor has it he's been skimming profits off that craft brewery his wife inherited. My heart plummeted at the mention of my husband's name. I discreetly moved closer, trying to blend in with the gathered crowd. Claire shook her head. That's not all. I heard he's been having an affair with that young aide who works for the mayor. Rage and disbelief boiled inside me. An affair? Embezzlement? Impossible. Neil and I had been together since college, building a wonderful life centered around family values and my grandfather's cherished brewery legacy. Mom, can I have another burger? My 5-year-old son Milo tugged at my sundress, jarring me from my whirlwind of emotions. I plastered on a smile, ruffling his blonde hair. Of course, honey. Why don't you ask Dad to grill you one? As Milo scampered off to find Neil, I caught the pitying looks from Nancy and Claire. Did they suspect I had overheard? My cheeks burned with humiliation and anger. How dare they gossip about my husband behind my back? Later that evening, after putting Milo to bed, I stormed into the living room where Neil was watching TV. We need to talk. He glanced up, eyebrows raised. What's wrong, babe? The use of that sickeningly sweet nickname made me want to scream. I overheard something disturbing at the barbecue today, about you. Neil's expression hardened, eyes narrowing. What kind of rumors are people spreading now? That you've been embezzling from the brewery and having an affair with the mayor's aide. The words tumbled out in a torrent, each one slicing into my heart. For a long moment Neil was silent, his face unreadable. Then he let out a bitter laugh. You can't be serious, Lena. You're going to believe the malicious gossip of bored suburban housewives over your own husband? So it's not true? I pressed, searching his eyes for any flicker of deception. He rose from the couch, putting his hands on my shoulders as he looked me squarely in the eye. Of course it's not true. You're my world, Lena. You and Milo. I would never betray our family like that. His words should have reassured me, but a nagging seed of doubt had taken root. As I gazed at the man I thought I knew better than anyone, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was lying to me. Over the next few days, I found myself scrutinizing Neil's every move, his tardiness from work, his secretive phone calls, his unexplained absences. Each discrepancy fed the growing beast of suspicion gnawing at me. I knew I couldn't ignore the rumors any longer. For the sake of my son and my family's legacy, I had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Little did I know, the secrets I was about to uncover would shatter my world forever. In the days following the barbecue, I was consumed by a hunger for the truth that gnawed at me incessantly. Neil's nonchalant dismissal of the rumors did little to quell my growing doubts and suspicions about who he really was. I knew I needed evidence, something concrete, to validate or refute the whispers about his misdeeds. Hiring a private investigator crossed my mind, but that felt like an extreme violation of Neil's privacy, at least for now. My mind raced as I tried to think of ways to discreetly look into his affairs. That's when I noticed his car's glove compartment looked disheveled, as if it had been hastily closed. Steeling my nerves, I popped it open after Neil left for work one morning. My hands trembled as I rummaged through its contents until my fingers landed on an unfamiliar burner phone. My heart pounded as I turned it on, watching the home screen flicker to life, to reveal a stream of coded messages. 7 p.m., warehouse on 5th. Package is secured, funds will be transferred. Need to keep this off HQ's radar. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter with each cryptic message I read. What kind of shady deals was Neil mixed up in? I felt sick just imagining the possibilities. Working late again, babe? Neil's voice made me nearly jump out of my skin as he strolled into the living room, loosening his tie. I fumbled to turn off the burner phone and stuff it back into the glove compartment. Yeah, just catching up on some emails. He quirked an eyebrow at me. Everything okay? You seem jumpy. Mustering all my willpower, I plastered on what I hoped was a convincing smile. I'm fine, just feeling a bit run down from this merger we're working on at the brewery. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but Neil seemed to accept it with a nod and a peck on my cheek before wandering off to the kitchen. That night, after Neil fell into a whiskey-laced slumber, I tiptoed to his home office and booted up his computer, my heart pounding in my ears. If he was engaging in something illegal, maybe there would be evidence on here. Email after email only deepened the pit of dread in my stomach. Communications about under-the-table payments, confidential brewery recipes being covertly shared with competitors, dollar amounts that made my head spin just looking at them. The man I thought I knew was a mirage. This emails laid bare the harsh reality. Neil was a liar, a cheat, a criminal. He had been defrauding my family's company and betraying my trust in the cruelest way imaginable. Tears stung my eyes as I finally understood the depth of his deceit. But my anguish was rapidly being replaced by a scorching anger. How dare he defile everything my grandfather built from the ground up through decades of hard work and integrity? I would make Neil pay for this. He would face the consequences for every last illicit deal, every betrayal, every moment of treachery. I didn't know how yet, but I would bring him down. No more Mrs. Nice Wife. It was time to fight fire with fire. Armed with the damning evidence from Neil's computer and burner phone, I knew I needed professional help to properly investigate the full extent of his betrayal. I kept a low profile around Neil, continuing to play the role of the doting, oblivious wife as I secretly met with a private investigator named Frank Jennings. Frank was grizzled and no-nonsense, just the type I needed to discreetly dig into Neil's tangled web of lies. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town to discuss my concerns. "You were right to come to me, Mrs. Morrison," Frank said gruffly as he pored over the emails and messages I had printed out. "This is some serious shady shit your husband is mixed up in." I cringed at his blunt delivery, but appreciated his candidness. "Just call me Lena. And yeah, it seems Neil has been very busy behind my back with God knows what kind of illegal dealings." Frank nodded, rubbing his stubbly chin. "Well, from what I can gather, we're looking at embezzlement, fraud, corporate espionage, and this here?" He tapped one of the messages. "Looks like your hubby might also be having himself a little extramarital fun, too." My cheeks burned at the insinuation. An affair? With who?" "Some young thing name of Marina Castillo. She's an aide for the mayor." The words felt like a physical blow to my gut. An affair. How could I have been so blind? Over the next few weeks, Frank gathered an overwhelming mountain of proof. Financial records, surveillance photos, witness testimonies. It became undeniable that Neil had not only been systematically looting funds from my family's brewery, but also selling corporate secrets and confidential recipes to our biggest competitors. And his mistress, Marina, appeared to be his willing accomplice and confidant through it all. One night, Frank played me an audio recording of Neil and Marina meeting at a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. Between the lewd giggling and cringeworthy pet names, my heart shattered into pieces all over again as I listened to them conspire about their next underhanded scheme. When the recording ended, tears of humiliation and rage streamed down my face. Frank sat silently, no doubt used to these kinds of emotional breakdowns from the spouses of cheaters and liars like Neil. But underneath my grief, a bright ember of fury was being stoked into an unquenchable blaze. I would make Neil regret ever crossing me and jeopardizing everything I held dear. "What now, Mrs. Lena?" Frank asked gruffly, sensing the shift in my demeanor. I stared out the diner window at the grimy street, my jaw clenched with resolve. "Now, we take that bastard down. Make him pay for every last sin." For weeks, I had been frozen by the agony of Neil's betrayal. But the time for wallowing in shock and pity was over. He had awoken a vengeful awoke in me, and heaven help Neil once I was done with him. The drive home from the diner felt like I was in a trance. My mind whirled with equal parts fury and strategy as I plotted how to bring Neil's house of lies crashing down around him. Part of me yearned to storm into the house, to hurl the incriminating evidence in his smug face, and watch the shock and shame wash over him. But I forced myself to remain calm and calculated. I needed to keep playing the role of the unsuspecting wife a little longer, let him dig his grave even deeper before I buried him in it. When I arrived home, Neil was watching TV with a glass of scotch, looking utterly unbothered. "Hey, babe, you were out late again," he remarked as I entered, putting on my best nonchalant act. "Yeah, just tying up some loose ends at the brewery." The lie slid smoothly off my tongue as I fought to keep my contempt hidden behind a placid smile. Neil grinned and patted the spot beside him. "Well, get your cute butt over here. There's still time for a little nightcap." He waggled his eyebrows lasciviously. Bile rose in my throat as I imagined him making those same lecherous overtures to his precious Marina, but I swallowed my revulsion and slinked over to cuddle up beside him, playing along with his game as I plotted his downfall. Over the next few days, I watched Neil continue his dual life of deception, smiling to my face while gallivanting around indulging his sleazy vices behind my back. The oblivious routine he kept up around me, unaware of how much I knew, was almost comical. Finally, I could take no more of the charade. I cornered him in the kitchen one afternoon after confirming Milo was over at a friend's house. "What's going on, babe? You've seemed off lately," Neil asked with a carefully measured dose of concern as he poured himself a drink. I stalked up to him, snatching the crystal tumbler from his hands and slamming it down with a crash, splattering scotch across the counter. "Cut the crap, Neil! I know everything!" He recoiled in shock before quickly regaining his composure, lips curling into a sneer. "Really? And what, pray tell, do you think you know? I know about the embezzlement from my family's company. I know you've been selling corporate secrets to our competitors. I know about your sordid little fling with Marina." To his credit, Neil barely flinched, covering his surprise with a condescending chuckle. Lena, you've really let your imagination run wild this time. This is just sad, not to mention insulting. After everything we've been through together?" He took a step towards me, reaching out to caress my cheek almost tenderly. "You're my world, babe. You have to know that. All these crazy accusations, they're just paranoid delusions." My blood boiled at his mocking, gaslighting tone. In one blistering motion, I whipped out the burner phone with the incriminating messages and hurled it squarely at his face, watching it clock him in the jaw. Neil reeled back, clutching his face and staring at me with a mask of shock and wounded pride. "You crazy bye!" "Shut up," I roared, adrenaline and pure venom coursing through me. "I have proof of every last depraved thing you've done. Financial records, recordings, everything. So cut the innocent act, you slimy bastard." We stood in seething silence for a moment, each glaring at the other with a molten contempt. His eyes flickered with uncertainty for a brief second before hardening once more. Neil straightened up, puffing out his chest defiantly. "You think you've got me all figured out, huh? You don't know a goddamn thing, Lena." "Not really." With that vague, ominous warning, he stormed out, leaving me breathing raggedly amid the wreckage. The gauntlet had been thrown. Now the real battle would begin. After the explosive confrontation with Neil, the air was thick with tension around the house. He tried putting on a nonchalant front, but I could sense the disquiet lurking beneath his arrogant facade. For my part, I stayed coldly civil, biding my time and gathering more ammunition for the war ahead. Frank, the private investigator, had become my closest confidant during this chaos. We met frequently at our discreet diner to review the mounting evidence of Neil's malfeasance. "This is some heavy stuff, Lena," Frank remarked one afternoon as he shuffled through the incriminating financial records. "Your husband's looking at serious prison time if we take this to the DA's office." I nodded grimly, wrapping my hands around my coffee mug. As much as Neil's betrayal sickened me, the idea of him rotting behind bars gave me no joy either. I just wanted to uproot the cancer he'd planted in my family's legacy. "Actually, Frank, I had something else in mind for dealing with this dirtbag." He cocked an eyebrow quizzically, so I laid out my plan to launch a coordinated takedown at the brewery's upcoming annual gala. Neil's misdeeds would be explosively revealed before the entire community, destroying his credibility and showing everyone his true colors. "You sure you want to go nuclear like that?" Frank asked skeptically. "Public humiliation on that scale, it's no walk in the park." "He deserves that and more for what he's done," I replied, feeling my anger flare up again. "Neil has jeopardized my family, our business, our entire livelihood, all in service of funding his vices and stroking his ego. It's time he suffered the consequences of his selfish choices." In the following days, I doubled down on my efforts, coordinating an allied strike force against Neil. Longtime business partners and vendors Neil had swindled were eager to join the crusade after I presented the facts. Several employees he'd deceived also threw their support behind my insurrection, providing even more damaging testimony. On the home front, Neil had clearly sensed the shifting winds. His usual suave hubris had given way to sullenness and paranoia that he tried masking with more alcohol. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" he demanded one night as I lingered in the living room while he channel surfed. I met his accusatory glare evenly. "Like what? Like you've got some twisted scheme brewing in that head of yours?" He took a swig from his tumbler, amber liquid sloshing over the rim. I shrugged nonchalantly. "What would give you that idea?" Neil opened his mouth to retort, but seemed to think better of it, grinding his jaw sullenly before returning his gaze to the television. I watched dispassionately as he quickly drained his glass, gazing through hooded eyes at the monster I once called my husband. The gala was only a few nights away. He would finally get the reckoning he deserved, and the brewing storm would break at last. The night of the brewery's annual gala had arrived, and an electric sense of anticipation coursed through me. Tonight would be Neil's night of reckoning, after months of lies and betrayal. I had gathered an army of witnesses and co-conspirators, disgruntled employees, vengeful business partners, anyone Neil had wronged during his reign of duplicity. Frank and I had meticulously compiled all the evidence into an undeniable case that would detonate at the climax of the evening. "You ready for this?" Frank muttered under his breath as we made our entrance into the lavish event hall where the gala was being held. I gave a terse nod, scanning the milling crowd of the city's business elite until my eyes landed on Neil, holding court near the bar as always. He was all smiles and swagger, downing a glass of scotch and soaking up the attention. For a fleeting moment, a ghost of my old affection for him stirred in my chest. Then I remembered the mountains of incriminating evidence detailing his litany of sins, the embezzlement, the corporate espionage, the callous infidelity. Any empathy I felt withered on the vine. The gala proceeded according to tradition: stuffy speeches, self-congratulatory award presentations, endless schmoozing over overpriced hors d'oeuvres. All the while, I bided my time, waiting for Neil's moment in the spotlight when I would detonate the bombshell. "And what a year it's been for our hometown brewery," the mayor herself was saying as she took the stage, grinning broadly with Neil standing beside her. "Thanks to our good friend Neil Morrison's outstanding leadership, the company has achieved remarkable growth and success." I caught Neil's eye from across the crowd and the ghost of a wink as he basked in the accolades. I suppressed the urge to sneer in revulsion. "So it is my privilege to present to Neil the Businessman of the Year award." The mayor began clapping proudly, the entire audience following suit in thunderous applause. This was it. I gave Frank a steely nod, and he immediately dimmed the lights as I strode up on stage, ripping the microphone from the mayor's hands. "Hold your applause," I growled, glaring out at the shocked, confused crowd. "Neil Morrison doesn't deserve any awards tonight. He's a crook and a criminal who's been robbing this brewery and this city blind." A deafening silence fell over the audience. Neil's expression morphed into one of outraged disbelief. "What is the meaning of this?" He sputtered as I unleashed a blistering recitation of the laundry list of offenses: embezzlement figures, incriminating emails, records of illicit transactions. Each salvo burrowed in like shrapnel, drawing gasps and murmurs from the gala crowd. When I turned to Neil's mistress, Marina, sitting in the front row, I saw her features contorted in horror. And let's not forget, while Neil was looting from his employees and business partners, he was also stupping around behind my back with this little hussy. Chaos erupted in the event hall as Marina burst into hysterical tears. Other audience members erupted in raucous shouts and boos directed towards the stage. Through it all, Neil stood rooted to the spot, his face rapidly cycling through a spectrum of emotions: anger, panic, fear. I locked eyes with him, letting him absorb the debilitating optics of his public immolation. After sowing so many seeds of betrayal and deception, the harvest he reaped was a bitter, devastating reckoning. Within days, Neil was under arrest, slapped with multiple charges including embezzlement, bribery, and corporate fraud. His reputation and credibility were in smoldering ruins. I couldn't deny a deep sense of gratification watching karma render its ultimate verdict on my deceitful husband. But our saga wasn't over quite yet. In the aftermath of Neil's catastrophic public downfall at the gala, the legal heavens came crashing down on him with biblical force. He was swiftly arrested and hauled off in handcuffs as the damning evidence I had compiled with Frank's help was presented to the district attorney. Charges rained down like hellfire: embezzlement, corporate fraud, tax evasion, bribery. For weeks leading up to Neil's trial, a frenzy of media coverage dissected every tawdry detail of his betrayals. His affair with Marina was breathlessly splashed across the front pages, complete with the sordid recordings Frank had obtained of their indiscreet liaisons. The brewing company's shady business dealings and the plundering of its coffers were mercilessly exposed for the world to gape at. Reporters camped outside our home, hungry for any fresh morsel of scandal from the Morrison family drama. Through it all, Neil remained defiant, head held high as he arrived at the courthouse in his expensive suits. Only the faint muscle twitching in his clenched jaw hinted at the maelstrom of panic and loathing swirling beneath that arrogant veneer. "This is a disgraceful sham being perpetrated by my unhinged wife," he snarled at a pack of reporters shoving microphones in his face. "I was betrayed and set up by someone I trusted, but the truth will come out, and I will be exonerated." His audacious use of the victim card only fueled my resolve as I took the stand and mercilessly dismantled his lies over multiple searing days of testimony. I presented the documented evidence, layer by damning layer, until his pathetic protestations of innocence crumbled to ash. Marina, his former mistress, proved to be his ultimate undoing. Likely realizing her culpability and facing potential charges of her own, she flipped on Neil in exchange for leniency. The lurid details of their affair and illicit financial entanglements she revealed had the jury visibly recoiling in disgust. "Your Honor, this man is a rapacious, narcissistic con-man who shattered my family's legacy with his unchecked greed and debauchery," I declared in my closing statement, leveling an accusatory glare at Neil. "He has earned nothing less than the most severe punishment the law can deliver." Neil held my gaze for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Perhaps in those seconds, he finally glimpsed the man he had become, a ravenous, immoral shell obsessed only with satisfying his own vain desires at any cost. When the judge finally read the jury's verdict of guilty on all counts, I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders. Justice, at long last. The emotional circus played out in hushed murmurs and camera flashes around me. But my focus was solely on Neil, shoulders slumped in defeat, as the bailiff slapped cuffs around his wrists and led him away to await sentencing. He deserved every agonizing second of this humiliation after the suffering he had inflicted on me and our family. At the sentencing weeks later, the judge took no pity on Neil, slamming him with over 2 decades in federal prison, plus millions in fines and restitution. As they hauled him off, I locked eyes with my disgraced husband one final time. He opened his mouth, perhaps to finally offer a sliver of apology or remorse. But I'd heard enough of his lies. With a curt shake of my head, I turned and walked out of that courtroom a free woman at last. The lengthy legal saga was finally over. But aside from justice served, there remained the matter of salvaging my family's brewery from the rubble of Neil's selfish decimation. With Neil's epic downfall now complete and the legal turmoil finally behind me, it was time to start rebuilding what he had so selfishly torn down. My family's brewery needed to rise like a phoenix from the ashes of his greed and deception. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work, poring over the company's finances with a newly hired forensic accounting team. The scale of Neil's embezzlement and corporate sabotage was even more staggering than I had initially uncovered. Millions had been siphoned into his secret slush funds. Invaluable trade secrets and recipes had been illicitly sold off to our biggest competitors, eroding our market share and brand value. It was a miracle the entire enterprise hadn't already collapsed under the weight of his treachery. My first priority was to cut out the lingering rot and install safeguards to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. I fired every last person, even tangentially complicit in enabling Neil's underhanded schemes. A new, if costly, corporate ethics program with robust auditing and oversight protocols was swiftly implemented. With a new, streamlined leadership team of my most trusted allies in place, we began the painful process of judicial asset repatriation, recouping as much of the stolen money and intellectual property as possible. It was a labyrinthine legal quagmire that seemed never-ending. "Don't worry, Mom, you've got this," Milo encouraged one night as I was hunched over spreadsheets, my eyes throbbing from hours of scrutinizing Neil's complex money trail. "You're the strongest person I know." My son's words were a soothing balm. He was my true north, the unblemished kernel of goodness that had survived the scorched earth of his father's villainy. I pulled Milo into a fierce embrace, realizing just how much of his childhood had been tainted by the atmospheric tension of Neil's secret misdeeds. No more. I vowed then and there that Milo would grow up witnessing the integrity and righteous resilience modeled by his mother in the wake of this nightmare. With each agonizing step forward in the long journey of restoring the brewery's tarnished reputation and fiscal solvency, I felt lighter. The shackles of denial and delusion about Neil's true nature no longer weighed me down. I had faced the hardest truths about the man I once loved and slayed those dragons. Some nights I still found my mind wandering, wondering what direction Neil's life had careened off toward behind those cold, unfeeling bars of his prison cell. I felt pity for the broken husk of a man he must have become, but any lingering hint of affection had been seared away by the betrayal and trauma he inflicted. A few years into my tenure as the new CEO, I made the ceremonial first pour of a fresh batch of our flagship IPA, using the original recipe from my grandfather's time at the helm. As I sipped the crisp, hoppy ale, the flavors carried more significance than just simple refreshment. This beer represented reclaimed legacy, righteous perseverance in the face of greed and deception, and enduring pride in doing things the right way through honesty and integrity. The brewery's annual holiday gala arrived again, always a festive source of community cheer and revelry. Except now, there were no seedy undercurrents of scandal or seething familial disharmony. Just joy, optimism, and renewed faith in the decades-old local institution that had been reborn under my steady hand. As I looked out over the smiling, celebrating crowd, I felt an immense sense of catharsis. The demons had been purged, the damage repaired, Neil's poisoned husk had been excised, and my family's true spirit preserved. It was a new dawn for me, for Milo, for the brewery's next generation of ethical, honorable leadership. My vengeance had been equally punishing and restorative, fitting justice for the man who tried to burn it all down for his own selfish vices. And in the end, I got to build it all back up stronger than ever before. The letter trembled in my hands, its contents threatening to shatter the peaceful life I'd built. I read it again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. "Sarah?" Ethan's voice floated up from downstairs. "Everything okay?" I swallowed hard, stuffing the letter into my pocket. "Fine, honey, just sorting through some old papers." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Ethan and I had always prided ourselves on our honesty, but how could I confront him with this? How could I ask my husband of 15 years if he'd been living a double life? I made my way downstairs, plastering on a smile as I entered the kitchen. Ethan stood at the stove, stirring a pot of his famous chili. The domestic scene felt surreal now, tainted by the weight of the secret in my pocket. "There you are," he said, flashing me that boyish grin that had first stolen my heart. "Taste this for me, will you?" I obliged. Letting the spicy flavors dance on my tongue, it was delicious as always. But the warmth of the chili couldn't chase away the chill that had settled in my bones. "Perfect," I managed, forcing a smile. Ethan's brow furrowed. "You sure you're okay, Sarah? You look a little pale." I waved off his concern. "Just tired from work. Nothing a good night's sleep won't fix." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Well, dinner's almost ready. Why don't you set the table?" As I laid out plates and silverware, my mind raced. Should I confront him now, or wait until I had more proof? The letter had been anonymous, after all. But the details, they were too specific to be a random accusation. We sat down to eat, the silence between us growing heavier with each passing moment. Ethan chatted about his day at the office, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "Oh, I almost forgot," he said suddenly. "Your sister called earlier. She wants us to come over for dinner this weekend." I nearly choked on my chili. "Lisa? What did she want?" Ethan shrugged. "Just to catch up, I guess. It's been a while since we've seen her." My grip tightened on my fork. "Lisa." Of course she'd be involved in this somehow. Our relationship had always been strained, but this was a new low, even for her. I don't think that's a good idea, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Ethan looked up, surprised. Why not? I thought you two were trying to patch things up. I laughed bitterly. Patch things up? Lisa's never cared about anyone but herself. Sarah, Ethan said, his tone gentle. What's really going on? You've been acting strange all evening. For a moment I considered telling him everything, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need some air, I muttered, heading for the door. Sarah, wait! But I was already gone, stepping out into the cool night air. My hand slipped into my pocket, fingers brushing against the crumpled letter. I pulled it out, reading it one more time in the dim glow of the porch light. The words seemed to mock me now. Your husband isn't who you think he is. Ask him about July 15th, 2010. Ask him about the cabin in the woods. Ask him about the baby. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. When I opened them again, I saw Ethan watching me from the window, concern etched across his face. In that moment, I knew our life would never be the same. The perfect marriage, the successful careers, the plans for our future. It all felt like a house of cards, ready to come crashing down. And somewhere out there, I was sure Lisa was laughing. I stood outside Lisa's apartment, my hand poised to knock. The familiar dread I always felt around my younger sister churned in my stomach. But I needed answers, and Lisa was the only one who might have them. Taking a deep breath, I rapped on the door. Moments later, it swung open, revealing Lisa's perfectly made-up face and designer outfit. Well, well, she drawled, leaning against the doorframe. If it isn't my successful big sister, to what do I owe the pleasure? I pushed past her into the apartment, ignoring her sarcasm. We need to talk, Lisa. She closed the door, her eyes narrowing. About what? I pulled the crumpled letter from my pocket, thrusting it towards her. About this. Did you send it? Lisa barely glanced at the paper. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, I snapped. It's about Ethan. About a baby. What do you know? For a split second, something flashed across Lisa's face. Surprise? Fear? But it was gone so quickly, I couldn't be sure. Sarah, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I think you're losing it. Why would I know anything about Ethan's secrets? I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to shake her. Because you've always been jealous of what Ethan and I have. You've always tried to come between us. Lisa laughed, the sound grating on my nerves. Oh, please, not everything is about you, sis. Maybe Ethan just got tired of playing house with Little Miss Perfect. Her words hit me like a slap. What's that supposed to mean? She shrugged, moving to pour herself a glass of wine. Nothing. Just that maybe there's more to your precious husband than you know. I watched her, my suspicion growing. You do know something, don't you? Tell me, Lisa, what happened on July 15th, 2010? The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. What? July 15th, 2010, I repeated. The cabin in the woods, the baby. What do you know? Lisa set down her glass, her composure slipping. I don't know what you're talking about, but I could see the lie in her eyes. You're protecting him, I realized. Why? What hold does Ethan have over you? Get out, Lisa hissed, her face flushing. You're crazy, Sarah. Always have been. Always will be. I stood my ground. Not until you tell me the truth. Lisa's eyes darted around the room, like a cornered animal. Then suddenly she lunged for her phone on the coffee table. What are you doing? I demanded. Calling Ethan, she spat. He needs to know how unhinged his wife has become. I moved without thinking, grabbing her wrist. Don't you dare. We struggled for a moment, Lisa's manicured nails digging into my skin. In the scuffle, a framed photo on the side table crashed to the floor. We both froze, staring at the shattered glass. And that's when I saw it. A glimpse of a photo I'd never seen before, half hidden under the broken frame. I bent down, my heart pounding. It was a picture of Lisa and Ethan. They were standing in front of a small wooden cabin, Ethan's arm around Lisa's waist, and Lisa was holding a baby. The room spun around me as I picked up the photo with trembling hands. What is this? Lisa's face had gone pale. Sarah, I can explain. But I was already backing away, the truth hitting me like a tidal wave. My sister. My husband. A secret child. How could you? I whispered, my voice breaking. Lisa reached for me, her eyes pleading. Sarah, please. I shoved past her, stumbling out of the apartment. The last thing I heard was Lisa's voice calling after me. Sarah, wait. You don't understand. But I understood all too well. As I ran down the stairs, clutching the damning photo, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life had been a lie. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. The drive to Ethan's parents' house was excruciating. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as Ethan chatted about work beside me. How could he act so normal when our world was crumbling? "Sarah?" Ethan's voice broke through my thoughts. "You missed the turn." I jerked the wheel, making a sharp U-turn. "Sorry, I was distracted." Ethan frowned. "You've been distracted a lot lately. Is everything okay?" I wanted to scream, to confront him about the photo, about Lisa, about everything, but not here, not now. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just stressed about work." We pulled into Lyle and Martha's driveway, the familiar two-story colonial looming before us. I'd always felt welcome here, but today the house seemed to hold secrets of its own. Martha greeted us at the door, her smile warm but her eyes sharp. "Sarah, dear, and Ethan, my boy. Come in, come in." As we stepped inside, I noticed Martha's gaze lingering on Ethan, a silent exchange passing between them. My suspicion deepened. Lyle emerged from his study, clapping Ethan on the back. "Good to see you, son. Sarah, you're looking lovely as ever." We settled in the living room, making small talk about work and the weather. But there was an undercurrent of tension, like a live wire running beneath the polite conversation. "So," Martha said, setting down her teacup, "when are you two going to give us some grandchildren?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I saw Ethan stiffen beside me. "Mom," he said, his voice strained, "we've talked about this. Sarah and I are focused on our careers right now." Martha's eyes narrowed. "But surely you want children, Ethan. You've always been so good with kids." Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. "What do you mean, Martha?" She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, you know, he's always been a natural with children. Remember that summer you spent volunteering at the youth camp, Ethan?" Ethan's face had gone pale. "That was a long time ago, Mom." "Summer camp?" I asked, my heart racing. "When was this?" "Oh, must have been, 2010? Martha said, her eyes never leaving Ethan's face. 2010. The year from the letter. The year in the photo with Lisa and the baby. "Ethan never mentioned a summer camp," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Lyle cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should change the subject." "No," I interrupted, turning to Ethan. "I'd love to hear about this camp. Was it near a cabin in the woods by any chance?" The room went deathly silent. Ethan's face was a mask of shock and guilt. Martha set down her teacup with a clatter. "I think I need some fresh air," she announced, hurrying out to the patio. I stood up, my legs shaky. "I'll join you, Martha." Outside, the cool air did nothing to calm my racing heart. Martha was leaning against the railing, her back to me. "You know, don't you?" I said quietly. "About Ethan and Lisa. About the baby." Martha's shoulders sagged. She turned to face me, her eyes brimming with tears. "Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. We never meant for you to find out like this." "So it's true," I whispered, my world shattering around me. Martha reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "It's complicated, dear. There's so much you don't understand." "Then help me understand," I cried, my voice rising. "Tell me the truth, Martha. All of it." She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, the patio door slid open. Ethan stood there, his face a mix of fear and resignation. "No, Mom," he said quietly. "I'll tell her. It's time Sarah knew everything." As I looked between them, I realized that whatever Ethan was about to say would change my life forever, and there was no going back. I stormed into my parents' house, my emotions a volatile mix of anger and desperation. The confrontation with Ethan and his parents had left me reeling, and I needed answers. Real answers from the people who had raised me. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, my voice echoing through the familiar halls. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Sarah? What's wrong, honey? You look upset." Dad emerged from his study, his brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything all right?" I laughed bitterly. "No, everything is not all right. I need to talk to you both, now." We gathered in the living room, the tension palpable. I paced back and forth, trying to gather my thoughts. "Sarah, you're scaring us," Mom said softly. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, then plunged in. "I know about Ethan and Lisa. I know about the baby." The color drained from both their faces. Dad's hand tightened on the armrest of his chair. What are you talking about?" Mom stammered. "Don't," I snapped. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore. I found a photo of them together with a baby at some cabin. And Ethan's parents, they know something too. I want the truth. All of it. My parents exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Dad sighed heavily, suddenly looking much older than his years. Sarah, honey, he began, it's complicated. Stop saying that, I shouted, my composure finally breaking. Everyone keeps saying it's complicated, but no one will tell me what's really going on. Mom reached out to me, but I jerked away. We were trying to protect you, she said, her voice trembling. Protect me? I scoffed. By lying to me for years? By letting me marry a man who had a child with my own sister? Dad stood up, his face grave. It wasn't like that, Sarah. At least she was in trouble. Ethan was trying to help. Help? I repeated incredulously. By fathering her child? No, Mom interjected. Ethan isn't the father. He never was. The room spun around me. What? Dad took a deep breath. Lisa got mixed up with some bad people. She was young, naive. When she found out she was pregnant, she was scared. Ethan, he offered to help her hide until the baby was born. But the photo, I whispered, was taken the day Lisa gave the baby up for adoption, Mom finished. Ethan was there for moral support. I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. Why didn't anyone tell me? Lisa made us promise, Dad said. She was ashamed, Sarah, and we thought it was better if you didn't know. We never imagined it would come out like this. The pieces were falling into place, but something still didn't add up. But why keep it a secret all these years? Why did Ethan never tell me? My parents exchanged another loaded glance. Mom's voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke, because the people Lisa was involved with, they're dangerous, Sarah. We were all trying to keep you safe. A chill ran down my spine. Safe from what? Before they could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Stay away from Lisa, for your own good. I showed the message to my parents, watching the color drain from their faces once again. Oh God, Mom breathed. They've found her. Dad's voice was urgent. Sarah, listen to me. You need to leave town. Now. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not even Ethan. But, no buts, he insisted. We'll explain everything later, I promise. But right now, you need to go. Please, Sarah. Trust us. As I looked into their frightened eyes, I realized I had a choice to make. Stay and demand more answers, or run from a danger I didn't fully understand. With shaking hands, I grabbed my keys. I'll call you when I'm safe, I promised. As I rushed out the door, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The truth I'd sought had only led to more questions, and now it seemed it had put my very life in danger. I paced the living room, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. It had been 3 days since I'd fled my parents' house, and Ethan still hadn't come home. My calls went straight to voicemail, my texts unanswered. The silence was deafening. A knock at the door made me jump. Heart racing, I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. It was Martha, Ethan's mother. I opened the door, my voice trembling. Martha, what are you doing here? Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Sarah, dear, I need to talk to you about Ethan. A chill ran down my spine. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Martha sank onto the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. Have you heard from him? I shook my head. Nothing. I was hoping you had. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. He's gone, Sarah. He left a note. Oh God, I can't believe this is happening again. Again? I repeated, my mind reeling. What do you mean, again? Martha, what's going on? She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her purse, handing it to me with shaking hands. Read it, please. I unfolded the note, recognizing Ethan's handwriting immediately. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. They found her. I have to go. Keep Sarah safe. I love you all. E. The room spun around me. Who found who? Martha, please. I need to understand what's happening. Martha's voice was barely above a whisper. It's happening all over again, just like with Lisa. Lisa? I said, my voice rising. What does she have to do with this? Martha looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. Everything, Sarah. Lisa is at the center of it all. She took a deep breath, then began to speak. Years ago, before you and Ethan were married, Lisa got involved with some very dangerous people. A criminal organization. She thought she was in love, but she was being used. I sank into a chair, my legs no longer able to support me. Go on, I whispered. When she realized she was pregnant, she came to Ethan for help. He hid her at the cabin, helped her give the baby up for adoption. We thought it was over, that she was safe, but now they've found her. I finished, the pieces finally falling into place. Martha nodded. And Ethan? Oh, Sarah, he's always felt responsible. He couldn't save her then, but now. He's gone after her, I said, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. Just then, my phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Time's up. Choose a side. I showed it to Martha, watching the color drain from her face. Oh, God, she whispered. Sarah, you need to leave. Now, it's not safe here anymore. But as I stared at the message, something inside me snapped. I was tired of running, tired of being kept in the dark. No, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm not going anywhere. It's time I faced this head on. Martha's eyes widened. Sarah, you don't understand. These people, they're dangerous. I don't care, I interrupted. Ethan's out there, risking his life for my sister. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I stood up, a plan already forming in my mind. I'm going to find them, Martha, both of them, and I'm going to end this once and for all. Martha reached for me, her voice pleading. Sarah, please think about what you're saying. You could be killed. But my mind was made up. As I looked at Martha's terrified face, I knew I was crossing a line from which there was no return. I'd rather die fighting than live in fear, I said, my voice steady. It's time to finish what Lisa started all those years ago. As I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Whatever lay ahead, whatever dangers I might face, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. I stood in Ethan's favorite bar, surrounded by his friends, their accusing glares burning into me. I'd come here hoping for answers, but all I found was hostility. What did you do to him, Sarah? Jake, Ethan's best friend, demanded. He was fine until that night he came home from your parents' place. I flinched, remembering the argument that had preceded Ethan's disappearance. I didn't do anything. I'm trying to find him, just like you are. Bull, Sarah, another friend, spat. Ethan would never just leave, not unless you pushed him away. The unfairness of it all made my blood boil. You don't know anything about what's going on, I snapped. None of you do. Jake stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. Then enlighten us, Sarah. What exactly is going on? For a moment, I considered telling them everything about Lisa, the baby, the dangerous people from her past. But the memory of that threatening text message stopped me. I couldn't risk putting anyone else in danger. I can't, I said, my voice breaking. I'm sorry, but I can't explain. The group's hostility seemed to intensify. I felt cornered, outnumbered. Maybe you should just go, Sarah said coldly. We'll find Ethan ourselves. As I turned to leave, defeated, my phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Tick-tock, Sarah. Time's running out for Ethan and Lisa. My heart raced. I had to get out of here, had to keep searching. But as I reached for the door, a hand grabbed my arm. What's that? Jake demanded, having seen the message over my shoulder. Who's threatening you? And what does Lisa have to do with this? Before I could answer, the bar's TV caught my attention. A breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Local businessman Ethan Roberts and sister-in-law Lisa Carter missing. Foul play suspected. The room fell silent as everyone turned to watch. My legs gave out, and I sank onto a bar stool, my world crumbling around me. The reporter's voice seemed to come from far away. Sources say Roberts and Carter were last seen entering an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Police are treating their disappearance as suspicious. Sarah, Jake's voice was gentler now, tinged with concern. What the hell is going on? I opened my mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed again. This time it was Martha calling. Sarah, she sobbed as soon as I answered. They've taken Lyle. They left a note. They want you to come alone to the warehouse. Oh, God, Sarah, what are we going to do? The room spun around me. Ethan, Lisa, and now Lyle, all in danger because of me. Because I'd started asking questions, because I'd refused to let sleeping dogs lie. I'll handle it, Martha, I heard myself say, my voice sounding strangely calm. Just stay where you are. I'll bring them all home. As I hung up, I realized Ethan's friends were staring at me, their expressions a mix of confusion and growing understanding. Sarah, Jake said slowly, whatever's happening, you don't have to face it alone. Let us help. For a moment, I was tempted. But then I remembered the threats, the danger. I couldn't risk anyone else's life. I'm sorry, I said, standing up. But this is something I have to do on my own. As I walked out of the bar, my heart pounding and my mind racing, I knew I was walking into a trap. But I had no choice. Ethan, Lisa, Lyle, their lives were in my hands now. With each step towards my car, towards the warehouse where my fate awaited, I felt a strange mix of terror and determination. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. By the end of this night, everything would change. And I had to be ready for whatever came my way. The church was packed for Lyle's funeral. I sat in the front pew, numb with grief and exhaustion. The past week had been a blur of police interviews, sleepless nights, and unanswered questions. Martha sat beside me, her hand clutching mine, both of us lost in our sorrow. As the minister began his eulogy, a commotion at the back of the church caught my attention. I turned and my heart stopped. There, standing in the doorway, was Ethan, and beside him, looking pale and shaken, was Lisa. A collective gasp rippled through the congregation. Martha's grip on my hand tightened painfully. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what's happening?" I couldn't answer. I was frozen, watching as Ethan and Lisa made their way down the aisle. Ethan's eyes were fixed on me, a mixture of guilt and determination in his gaze. They reached the front, and Ethan spoke, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. "I'm sorry for interrupting, but there's something we need to say, something that can't wait any longer." The minister stepped aside, clearly at a loss. I stood up, my legs shaking. "Ethan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "where have you been? What's going on?" He took a deep breath, glancing at Lisa before turning back to me. "Sarah? We've been hiding from the people who were after Lisa, the ones who killed Lyle." A murmur ran through the church. I felt like I was in a nightmare, unable to wake up. "But that's not all," Lisa chimed in, her voice small and frightened. "Ethan and we've been—" "No," I said, shaking my head. "Don't say it. Please, don't say it." But Ethan pressed on, his words like daggers to my heart. "We've been having an affair, Sarah. It started when I went to help Lisa hide. I'm so sorry. We never meant for it to happen, but—" The world tilted around me. I heard Martha's shocked gasp, felt the weight of everyone's stares. But all I could focus on was the crushing pain in my chest. "How could you?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "After everything we've been through, how could you do this?" Ethan reached for me, but I jerked away. "Sarah, please. You have to understand. We were scared. We thought we were going to die. It just happened." Lisa stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "Sarah, I know you must hate me, but we need your help. The people who killed Lyle, they're still after us. We don't know who else to turn to." I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through the church. "You betray me in the worst possible way, and now you want my help. How dare you?" But even as the words left my mouth, I knew I couldn't turn them away. Not with killers on their trail. Not with Lyle's death still unsolved. Martha stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "Get out, both of you. How dare you come here to Lyle's funeral with this betrayal?" Ethan's face crumpled. "Mom, please." We didn't know where else to go. Suddenly, the church doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits strode in, their hands reaching inside their jackets. "There they are," one shouted. "Get them!" Chaos erupted. People screamed, scrambling for cover. Ethan grabbed Lisa's hand, pulling her towards a side exit. "Sarah," he called over his shoulder. "Please, help us." As gunshots rang out, shattering the stained glass windows, I found myself faced with an impossible choice. Stay and let Ethan and Lisa fend for themselves, or risk everything to help the 2 people who had hurt me the most. In that moment, with bullets flying and my world crumbling around me, I made a decision that would change everything. And as I ran after Ethan and Lisa, ducking to avoid the gunfire, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I stood in the lawyer's office, my hands clenched at my sides, as Ethan and Lisa argued vehemently about their supposed rights to the family assets. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of revelations and betrayals, but nothing could have prepared me for this final insult. "You can't do this, Sarah," Ethan shouted, his face red with anger. "I'm Lyle's son. I have a right to my inheritance." Lisa nodded vigorously. "And as Ethan's partner, I should have a claim too. It's only fair." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? After everything you've done?" The lawyer, Mr. Thompson, cleared his throat. "If I may interject, the situation is quite clear legally. Mrs. Roberts, Sarah, is now legally Martha's adopted daughter. As such, she has full rights to the estate, as per Mrs. Roberts' will." Ethan's jaw dropped. "What? When did this happen?" I smiled sadly. While you were off playing house with my sister Ethan, Martha and I grew closer. She saw how much I cared for her, how I stood by her side through everything. She made her choice. Lisa lunged forward, her eyes wild. You manipulated her. You turned her against us. No, Lisa, I said firmly. You did that all on your own. Both of you did. Mr. Thompson produced a document. I have here Mrs. Roberts' last will and testament. It clearly states that all assets are to be transferred to her daughter, Sarah. There's no ambiguity. Ethan slumped in his chair, the fight seeming to drain out of him. Sarah, please. We can work this out. We're family. I felt a surge of strength I didn't know I possessed. No, Ethan. We were family. You and Lisa destroyed that when you betrayed me, when you lied, when you put your own selfish desires above everything else. What about forgiveness? Lisa pleaded. Isn't that what family does? I turned to her, my voice steady. Forgiveness is earned, Lisa, and neither of you has done anything to deserve it. Just then, the office door opened and Adam walked in. My rock, my support through this entire ordeal. He came to stand beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Is everything okay here? He asked, his eyes never leaving Ethan and Lisa. I nodded, drawing strength from his presence. Yes, we're just wrapping up. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Who's this? This is Adam, I said, my voice filled with pride. My husband. The shock on their faces was almost comical. Lisa sputtered. Husband? But how? When? While you two were busy trying to tear this family apart, Adam said calmly, Sarah and I were building something new, something stronger. I turned to Mr. Thompson. I believe we're done here. Please ensure that all the paperwork is in order. As we turned to leave, Ethan made one last desperate attempt. Sarah, please, we can start over. Give us another chance. I paused at the door, looking back at the two people who had once meant everything to me. No, Ethan, this is the end. I'm moving forward with my life, with people who truly love and respect me. I hope someday you both understand the damage you've caused. With that, Adam and I walked out, leaving Ethan and Lisa behind, not just in the office, but in my life. As we stepped into the sunlight, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The pain wasn't gone, not completely, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. Are you okay? Adam asked gently. I smiled up at him, tears in my eyes. I will be. We will be. As we walked hand in hand towards our future, I realized that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength to face them. The old Sarah, naive, trusting, easily manipulated, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the life she deserved. And as I looked towards the horizon, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been painful, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be.